I'm going to call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded by the Ways and Means Committee and GCTV, I think, although I don't see GCTV here. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. In accordance with MGL Chapter 30A, Section 20G, no person shall address a meeting of a public body without permission of the chair, and all persons shall, at the request of the chair, be silent.
Believe me.
No person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting of a public body if, after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting, and if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. Okay. So I'm going to call the roll. Let's see. Counselor Golub.
Present.
And Counselor Toronzo. Counselor Toronzo?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Counselor Forgy,
Here.
Counselor Bottomley,
Here?
and Counselor DeSorga. Everybody's here. So approval of the minutes, there aren't any. We actually are not. I asked Kathy not to put public comment in the beginning, but it's right here. So it's here on the agenda. So does anyone have public comment before we start this? Okay. Public hearing, none. Motion, none. So let's get started and welcome to the budget of 2024. Let me take it away.
Fantastic.
Someone,
Which that one's the Wi-Fi one?
I don't actually know.
Let me see.
Can I ask a question? If people are here, I'm just curious how we want to do questions, if we're doing questions throughout the presentation, and this is a question, yeah, throughout or at the end, or?
Well, my thought would be if someone has, if I'm happy to interact with two of us, but if somebody has a question about something as you're going along, is that okay? Or would you prefer to go through the whole thing?
No, I think it's fine.
We can ask questions as we go along.
Okay.
Yeah, the presentation is just kind of an overview, and then, you know, you also have your budget book and your budget. All right, you ready?
Okay, yes.
Okay. All right. You want to start, or what do you?
No, I would welcome Finance Director Diana Schindler, who will be presenting the FY24 budget. I presented it to the City Council already.
Okay. All right. So this is our FY24 budget overview. This is our first, obviously, look at the budget. It's very early in the process. Dictated by our charter, we do get started pretty early. So here's the agenda. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on some of the items on the end, but I did include them for the council and for Ways and Means to look at. I'll put this this PowerPoint in the shared drive so everyone can see it. So the budget process, as I mentioned, is governed by Mass General Law. We're required to present a balanced budget, so that's what we're presenting you. And this just outlines per your charter process, as I noted, that the process gets started relatively early in January, where the department present their requests. The mayor works with each department and then determines the budget she's going to present to the city council. And then per the charter, that budget is due 90 days, not less than 90 days before the start of the fiscal year. And then, as you know, you go through this process and then you go through city council, holds a public hearing and has to vote. Here's some term definitions. These are primarily related to the levy, 2.5 override and new growth. So if there's any discussion about Proposition 2.5 or any items. So did you want to see if I can mute that person?
The person on the phone being muted.
The person who's on the phone, perhaps me, can hear you a little bit. Thank you so much. You did that right away. Thank you.
I just muted all.
Thank you.
I mean, thank you. I didn't know somebody that
Okay.
help came from.
Okay, so I want to start just by talking about the revenue sources, which are primarily taxes, state aid, and local receipts. We also get some enterprise indirects, some pay-as-you-throw, parking receipts, and then in this budget, we are using a small amount of free cash and some OPEB stabilization. So these are the revenue trends by sources. You can see each year that, again, our tax levy is, steadily increasing along with state aid, although state aid stayed, it's not really, well, that doesn't show 24, but our estimated 24 is very flat. And this shows local receipts and other receipts. Enterprise and CPA, we're just starting CPA funds, and all other are the parking receipts and the trash pay-as-you-throw that I mentioned. So the key revenue items for this year is that when we were using all of the tax levy that we've estimated will be available to us, leaving only about 17,000 in excess levy. And again, that's based on our preliminary state aid numbers, which show only 150,000 increase, so it's less than 1% overall. And our local receipts at halfway point, about at the end of December, we're trending a slightly lower than anticipated. We don't have third quarter numbers in there. Oops. We don't have third quarter numbers in there, so it could be that local receipts end up being level, but right now, again, because we have to present a balanced budget based on the information we have currently, we're using a conservative estimate of receipts.
Okay. I will have questions actually about those things in that part, but.
Okay. This shows the general fund revenue we are expecting. So we've estimated taxes will be 61% of the levy of the revenues that we use. The state revenue right now, again, is at 30%. And then our local receipts 5%. And you can see a small amount from all those other sources that I mentioned. So collectively, that makes up what the balanced, or leaving that 17,000. But that's about the amount we need for the budget. This is another way just to show our property tax levy calculation. So we take last year's levy, we add 2.5%. We are using a conservative new growth number of 350. The levy limit, that would make the levy limit that number you see there. Then we do have a debt exclusion that we've included. So that's allowed to increase the levy up to that 41,998,535. And then the amount we're looking to basically levy is based on our balanced budget is the 41,981,035. So it would leave us with just 17,500 in unused levy capacity. And you can see the levy ceiling is much, is down at the bottom, and that's based on 2.5% of our total valuation. So this just kind of breaks down all the revenues that we use, the state revenue. It explains what is in state revenue. That's our school aid, our tuition reimbursement, our unrestricted government aid, payment in lieu of taxes, veterans benefits, abatements, and then we have some school choice money in public libraries that actually is offset money used directly for those purposes that they don't come to the city to use. This shows the cherry sheet receipts total that based on what I just discussed. So shows like we received about 2.1 in additional this year. This next page shows what our charges are. So against those receipts that I just showed, we also have these estimated charges we have to pay, which increased quite substantially at 6.5%. So that left our net state aid again, and this is the governor's local aid proposal, just the first proposal, but it left only a net state aid increase of about 150,000, so under 1%. And that's being driven somewhat by these numbers, which are the school cherry sheet receipts. So you can see that while Chapter 70 did increase by 3%, that number's held harmless even in a declining enrollment situation, which we had. But we received less money for our tuition reimbursement for charter schools because we have less students, and we received higher assessments for school choice and charter school. So those are netting out of our totals. We have to pay those, and that's about 300,000. So the total for the school net receipts is 199. And as I said that, the school choice is also decreasing. That money goes directly to the schools and is used their discretion. So, but that actually it looks like it went up, but it actually went down by 28%. I'm sorry, did you have
Can I ask you to go back to where you calculated the levy limit? It was several screens ago. Now that we're moving on, bring it back. Just go back.
Oh, further?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that was one.
There were two, one, and then there's that one, oops. But then there's the one that,
This is just showing the revenue, and this is showing from what we get from taxation.
Can you go back one, please?
Sure.
The 26,56932.
The 26.
The second number down, the
Yep.
state revenue.
20,000.
Yes.
20
20
20
million.
million. Yep. Yeah.
So our chapter 70 was actually 21 million.
16
No,
down,
it's
16.
Which is what we use later on during this.
16. 16. What it's proposed at.
Pardon me?
16.
It was the net cherry sheets that were 21 million.
That's everything.
Right.
21 million is everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, most of the receipts are from chapter 70, and it's 16.2. And then we get, the general government aid at nearly 4, and some of those other smaller amounts.
Okay.
But there are assessments that are charged against that. I think that's the next
No, no.
slide. There you go.
I get the assessments that were charged. It was just,
The discrepancy between those numbers, between the total cherry sheet, 21,010,000 something, and I think if you go back, at least I saw the discrepancy in here. Can you go back one more slide? That one. So there, the state revenue is showing up as 20,656,000. So there's a discrepancy between those calculations and looking at see that one and as the total estimated receipt.
I think because our cherry sheets also, we have there is another amount that's on the cherry sheet. Let's see. That's causing that.
That was the number I was looking at, that 21 million,
20 million.
no,
Right.
yes, but you have 20,656,000, that, I think that's really gonna
Because
matter.
this money, because some of this doesn't come into the city. So the 20 million is what comes in. These offset for general government for the libraries and the school choice, even though we've included them in to show the receipts, they're not they don't come into our revenue number. So they're in our cherry sheet receipts because some goes directly to the school and some goes directly to the library, but it's not our revenue. It's not the city revenue that we use when we set our tax rate.
Where does that money go?
The offset for the libraries goes directly into an account that is spent for public libraries. It's aid to public libraries, so I'm not sure, I don't know if they spend it on materials or that's a library question. And then the offset, the school choice gets that money, that goes directly to the schools and they spend it on whatever they want. It's like their, monies that they get for taking school choice students in. So that goes directly to them. So that's why they're not the same. Okay, so getting back to local receipts, this includes our department revenues, which are building inspections, license and permits, fines, fees, miscellaneous revenue. This number, as I mentioned, our local receipts were trending a little bit lower than we were anticipating at half year. And some of that was because of these license and permits, fines and forfeitures. But on the flip side, the motor vehicle excise and some of the other things that come in later in the year, will presumably come in. So, as I mentioned, once we get to setting the tax rate, we might be able to level fund those local receipts and bring that number up in revenue.
I think I referred to this as a moment in time budget, and that's really what it is, because we don't really know all the money that comes into the city until the end, when we have to set the tax rate, which doesn't happen until November. So really, but in order for us to get to a budget, we have to talk about and include and factor in what we have in hand.
And really at the most conservative level, because it's just so much easier to be having to reduce, having to add as opposed to having to reduce.
I just have a question or a comment about that. I can understand that, and I think we had a little discussion about this, but just for the benefit of everyone else, I want to say that the last set of receipts that we have is fiscal year 2022. And that was up over $1 million. I get that there was one-time thing in there. There was one-time item in there for 200 and something thousand. But the last thing that we have to look at was over $1 million up. So say like 900,000 without that. I know that I think we were 16,000 under on what we were sending out for excise tax bills. But with what you gave me by December 31st, we were up 75% in meals and hotel. So those numbers actually will make a big difference in what the final number is. And before we get to the, appropriations for each one, I just wanted to say, I'm not like seeing that as a true number. I looked back 4 or 5 years and the receipt number was generally 4 million.
That might have been what the actuals were, yes, but when we,
what we estimated every year, I looked back at fiscal 18, it was, 4.2 plus the parking, plus the parking, plus the pay as you throw, and we started pay as you throw. So I just, that ends up, that's all. It ends up really changing the outcome of what we're going to say is how much we can afford this year. So.
Correct.
And
yes. I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
And I think, again, just to emphasize that this is a moment in time and we have to be prudent, financially prudent and use the best, the conservative estimates. But, and as far as the receipts, like I mentioned, if we're going to, we can level fund, we can look at, after the third quarter, if we feel confident the receipts are coming in on track, we can level fund receipts, but we can never increase them unless we have to provide substantiate that to DOR if we want to increase it. So that's all I'm just saying. We may be able to increase it as long as we can substantiate it.
I have a follow-up question to that. So when will you have the receipts for quarter three?
We get them usually by the end of April. It takes like a month for them to get, we collect through the end of March, and then they get in, they get booked, and then they get reconciled between the accountant and the treasurer, and that's when, we book them. We like to have, we try to, from the finance department standpoint, give you the money we have on hand.
So by the end of April, we'll know what the actuals are for the first 3 quarters of
Yes.
this current fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay, can you please send that to us as soon as you have it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You do that normally, right?
I do.
On a
Yeah,
quarterly basis.
Yes, I'm
learning.
it's usually, I try to do it right away. I think I did it right after the half year. Yes.
Okay.
And it's in the share, the ones that I had put up there.
Okay.
Okay. So I won't spend too much on this. This just shows just the small amounts that we get. Even though in the numbers look big in the estimated receipts as in terms of the projected revenue, it's still a very small amount in pay as you throw in parking meter receipts. So, and I don't think it's any secret that we've been having some challenges with our parking. We're doing a parking study. We have a lot of things going on around the parking. So again, just want to be, we added 100,000 to that last year for estimated receipts. So, this year we're trending a little lower than that. So
We
hopefully we'll.
tend to rely fairly heavily on that parking meter receipts, and they are substantially down right now.
Yeah.
That has to do with issues that we're having with the parking garage, which will be corrected, but haven't been corrected yet.
And then our other funding sources, we are looking at OPEB stabilization. And again, that's money that we collect off of our cannabis revenue. We put that into our stabilization account, and we use that to fund our trust, but also we do use it in years to offset health insurance as well. We use it for current and future liability. And then free cash, we had projected using 50,000 of free cash, which is the same amount we used last year at this time.
It's a question about free cash then. So when you say using the 50,000, is that the amount that we have in free cash or that we have, or is that just the amount that you're hoping to put toward operating, or the amount that you're hoping to put, like when we put what you're hoping to put toward, I'm thinking this out loud, this 50,000 you're hoping to put toward operating, there was three orders to put toward capital.
That's right.
And
Yeah, so it calculates, so it allows for that, and it still leaves us with I think like 100,000. Again, it sort of depends on where those financial orders land, because the capital ones hadn't been recommended. I'm not sure, what will happen, but right now, we have the 50 and it still left us with the remaining balance. We like to leave some remaining balance for June 30th, just because we don't want, when we go to certify our free cash, not that there'll be any issues, but they like to, we like to leave some. And then we'll recertify it. And then when you set your tax rate last year, you might remember you used a big chunk of free cash that you had, to reduce the tax.
yeah,
So that's a separate amount. The amount we're talking about now is FY23 free cash.
okay. And so I just want to say what I think that you're saying to me back to you to make sure I'm following this. So we currently have, how much in free cash do we currently have?
595, not counting any of the financial orders that have been put forth.
Okay, so we have 595. You're planning to use 50,000 for operating, and then to use the additional for the 3 motions plus a little bit left over to leave us till June 30th.
That's right.
Okay.
And I have a question about that. So if we only use the 206, that is to fund the retro contract, then there would be.
That's Medicaid money, however,
But it's coming out of
Yes,
free
it's coming out of
but
free
it's
cash.
coming out of free cash.
Yes.
165.
No,
That's how much we have.
595.
Right. If we didn't fund the other two, 165. That's what the other two financial orders are.
The other two financial orders for capital?
Yes.
Okay. So we're not including the bocce course that ended up being the CPA?
No, I think that does include there were three
That
items.
little, okay,
65.
okay.
So if those other financial orders didn't pass, there'd be 390 left. Would that be available to use other than 50,000?
There would be more available to use.
Okay, all right. That's all I wanted to know. Thank
So I'd
you.
like to leave some, but yes.
That's leaving 50,000. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, so as far as I talked about the revenue, key revenue items, these are sort of the key budget drivers, and the mayor had articulated this in her letter to the council. Contractual obligations citywide, including the schools. As you know, we're funding retro for the schools, but we also have city contracts that have been settled and that are in the process of settling. We need to retain high-quality department heads and supervisory staff. It's a very competitive employment market. I did a census report today, and we have probably over 100 vacancies in the city, I would say. I'm not sure that's the exact number because maybe some of those jobs have been, subject to elimination at this point. But I'd say that we have a very high vacancy rate right now. And despite that, we still had an increase in personnel costs for active and retirees. Mostly our health insurance went up nearly 7%, and that was through a substantial negotiation effort with the health insurance, folks. It was intended to be way up in the double digits. So if we don't see claims sort of a change in our claims rates or a change in our demographic, chances are we are going to continue to see escalating health insurance costs. And we also had increases in contracted services similar to the costs and competitiveness of our employment market. There's a cost in contracted services. Our contracts are higher due to delays and subject to getting equipment and supplies. It's taking longer. There's just market volatility out there. And then we also, of course, you might know, we have a substantial increase this year in our short-term debt, and that's due to our bans that were, and include some of the library, the fire station, or other capital projects. So we just went out to the ban market, and we did get a substantial bond premium with our bid this time, and so that we would use next year to do some pay downs of our short-term debt, which would hopefully see us not having that huge jump in our budget next year, or less of a budget amount there. Any questions on that? Okay. So this is our general fund operating budget overall. Just shows by category, and it shows 21, 22. So 23 adopted is what we're talking about when we talk about the increase. We actually, if you look at, I think in your budget book or in the materials the mayor sent you, we also show you our amended 2023. So even though in last year we went to council with a budget of 58.3, we're now actually up around 60, 61 is our current amended budget. So this 6% is off what we adopted last year.
So that's actually not what it says in our book. It says adopted was 57,893, and the amended is 59,876.
Page are you?
I'm on page 63. And I went through, and it looked like most of that overage, because it was a $2 million difference, it looked like most of it was in the debt. We were $1,786,000 over on debt. And I wondered, what do we, how did we pay for that difference?
And so in the debt, it might have been, so we paid more debt.
We paid, yes, we paid almost $2 million more in debt than we appropriated.
I think we used some bond premium for that. So yeah, you could be right. That's what may have gotten added to the budget after. I mean, it's all the things that you voted. I mean, those things would have had to be voted, I'm pretty sure. So I don't have, an itemized.
So what line item were you looking at?
I'm on page 63.
Yeah, I get that. I'm
Okay, so
there.
total operating budget was 57,893,636. And then the amended was 59,876,178. But if you go to the debt on page
You right above it, you mean, Jenny? Is that what you're
yes,
talking about?
yes.
Yeah.
So what this, and I actually did check these numbers with last year's, with the book. So the bonded debt principal was 1,545,000, and we paid in principal 2,590,000. The bonded debt interest was 901,354, and we paid 1,680,48.
So those numbers are correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm actually wondering, looking at that for next year, because I added it up, what we're gonna, and I don't see that, and I see that 3,212,000 is being higher than that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last thing you just said, Jenny. Say that again with the three, you're
So
saying that.
our last number,
Yep,
3,212,213.
what's being requested, yep.
When I added up, the bonds and their interest, I get higher than that.
Well, Kelly presented those numbers. I think Kelly's on the call. She may be able to respond to that when she's
Okay.
up to talk about that. But I think like I said, we may have planned on using some bond premium or something else to reduce it. So.
All right, good.
Okay, well, the point that I was making is we did change, we have voted other things that have increased the budget over, what was voted. So I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers aren't lining up. I'm not sure why, but I'm pretty sure I got this right off of our tax rate recap information. But okay. So based on health insurance, again, just being one of our,
If I may.
Mike raised his hand. Hi, Mike.
Hi. I was just wondering that too, going back to that last sheet. I mean, this is what's presented now, and even the FY24 mayor line isn't corresponding with what's in our book, by $500,000. And then I think, as was noted, the previous years aren't, I don't know. So it's just, I guess, just a simple question is where did one chart come from and the other chart has different numbers?
I apologize, Mike. I don't know. I summarized this off of what I thought we had presented, but I may have presented this chart. What we presented in the budget book is accurate, so
Okay.
I'll recalculate it. The point was really to show the percentages. So I'm sorry,
Right.
I don't know. We did a few budget changes in the end. So, right at the last minute. So I may have just grabbed like one earlier copy or something. So I apologize for that.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I'll get it straightened out. I mean, it's pretty close. I know from seeing the percentages, it is really close, but you're right. It could be off by this, by the 500, and we should figure out where that is. So yes, I apologize. I'll update this and get it back to you guys.
No, I get it. That's fine. Like, that makes sense with even the current ones. I get that. And you're right. The percentages are off by, 0.02%. I was just wondering why, the ones that are adopted, those are settled numbers. And those don't really necessarily.
Yeah, maybe when I condensed down the sheet and totaled it up, maybe I lost something in the translation. Again, this was a larger sheet that I just kind of, condensed down and hid some other things just to show it in this aspect. So perhaps I inadvertently, forgot to, or deleted a row or something. So
Gotcha. Okay,
But the numbers in the budget book, just looking at them are correct.
okay.
So again, just bad slide. Cross out, bad
But
slide.
easy to update.
Yes, but I will update. So, thank you for your keen eyes.
Can we stay with the debt for a moment?
I have a whole
We're gonna go
section
there?
on debt too.
Great, let's-
More in detail if you want to talk.
I can totally wait for that, yep.
Yeah, I'll make the rest of it. I mean, unless you guys have a lot more questions, I think the rest of it's pretty straightforward. So I just kind of wanted to show, because for my own curiosity, I went back and looked at what we had, and plus during our sort of contract discussions, we wanted to see how rapidly our health insurance wasn't increasing. So, it's increased by about 23%, which year over year, I think for 5 years isn't terrible. I think the industry, I know, it can be all over the place, industry standard. So that's about, a little under 5% a year. But I think to note, we've had a very competitive insurance program, being that we have Health New England, which is owned by Bay State Health Group. That's helped us to stay pretty competitive. But this last, time around, our health insurance advisor was saying that, the health insurance company took somewhat of a hit this year, and that, again, if our claims experience or our plans or things didn't change, that the costs could continue to escalate substantially, like in the double digits, which we're hoping, we'd like to keep it in the single digits.
Keep in mind that what you're seeing there is all existing employees and
Well,
retirees.
this is active, and then I did a
Oh,
separate.
I'm sorry, that is
Yeah.
your active.
This is just
employees.
active.
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to show, because the
There you go.
retirees
That's the
actually
one.
have a different plan. They have a retiree supplemental plan, and then we also reimburse Medicare premiums for retirees. So that's the Medicare piece. So that has a cost, and that's going up because the premiums for Medicare are going up. So those went up quite a bit this year too. So. So there's been so much discussion out ahead of this budget, and I know it's been very jarring, for the school, but I did kind of want to show that although there's a slide in the, back here that talks about the school being just 30,
37,
I
36,
think it's
37%.
36%. Sorry, is it dizzying? 36% it says here for education, but that is not actually the number that we contribute. It's actually closer to the 61.4. Actually, this is the exact number from last year from DESI's calculations that those are all the things that we put into our net school spending calculation. Those are the costs on the government side, or on the city side, I should say. So I think the biggest one is the health insurance. Again, when you look at that 36%, that doesn't include any of the health insurance for the current or the active or retirees for the school. So for the school retirees, some of them are considered in our active plans because they're not of Medicare eligible age. So, and then, yeah.
So point of that slide,
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, to follow up or to sort of synthesize it, the point of that slide is to show that in addition to the 36%, which is allocated, think of it as the operating piece, this is the benefit side. So the total contribution to the city, from the city budget to the schools is a 61.4% contribution. We have to take care of all the employees, and those are the expenses for the most part that you see there, plus some debt for school capital projects and so forth.
Right. We do share central services, DPW. None of the school buildings, the DPW director will tell you that actually none of the municipal buildings right now pay water and sewer charges. So that's something we really need to look at in future years. But so these are just other, central services that the school uses. And then, of course, the charter and school choice tuitions, the city that go into our calculation, and then some of the IT and shared services.
So I was going to say, so none of this is the first time that That wasn't in anything that we were given. You were just showing us this for tonight for us to look at.
Yes.
And do you have a breakdown of the total additional spending on education and the line item spending on education? Those two, like those 14 million and almost 21 million are comprised of?
Well, I think those are the totals. So that's the total is
Okay.
additional 14.5, and then the line item is the appropriation, so that's the total, the 35. So it's the breakdown is about, it's the 14 million is broken down. And then the 1.3 is school in Smith Oak. It's just a small amount, but,
I have
and then,
Tech school.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, I have a question too. I just feel like the 61.4% number is a little misleading, because when we were talking about these 36 or 34%, we were referring to DLS numbers that uses standard reportings for all cities across the state. So this is a new formula. So I feel like that's mixing up our message a little bit. So I'm a little concerned with that number, because I don't know how that relates to any other city in the state. Because DLS has already put these numbers together for us with standard reporting. So
Right.
I feel like this actually muddies the waters a little more. We know that we're all connected. And also there's a huge number there, which I don't know the percentage, but the great majority of that would be Chapter 70, correct? Or state funding. That's not coming from our citizens.
What this is showing you is what the city adds to the schools by the services that the city provides them. It's not, you haven't seen it before stated like this, but that is what the additional spending is. So it's accounting for the IT services that's your general government line there. You can see all the different services and who in the city provides them. It's accounting for your central services, that's the procurement plus and central maintenance, plus your DPW and your utilities and so forth. And your,
No, I can see
Yeah.
that. I understand.
okay,
It's
just
the
so,
first
and your
time-
health insurance and so
Listen,
forth.
I got you, but it's the first time we're seeing this. And
That's
when you
right.
throw numbers
It's-
at us.
It's
if
the
we
same
don't
as
get to-
your,
no, listen to me, please. Would you stop for a minute?
the same as
You're
this.
throwing numbers at us and we don't get a chance to review them. That's very disturbing, because I have to talk about the elephant in the room. You're talking about a massive cut to the school department that'll be very damaging. So that is the elephant in the room. So we are looking at these numbers seriously, and we're looking at every number, and I hope you will seriously work with us to try to fund the schools and find money if we can. But I haven't had a chance to look at these, and it's a whole new way that you're looking at this. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. So I'm just letting you know our total frustration. I've also we've seen discrepancies between the books that are given us. So I'll have patience, but it's very frustrating when we work full-time jobs and we're trying to figure this out. We're not given consistent information or new information on a screen that I'm trying to figure out. So I'm just venting a little bit my frustration.
I just wanted to mention that on the next screen, just because this information comes from the net school spending compliance stuff, so.
It's not, that's fine. I totally agree with what John said, but Mike Schronzo had his hand up. So I'm gonna go to Mike next. Go ahead, Mike.
So kind of follow up on Catherine's thing. I can see where the total additional spending on education, 14 and change million, is the sum of everything listed above that. And then there's so where's the 6.5 million between that and the line item spending on education? With that's because it's not on this chart. So is there some place where that 6 million came from? Was it on a previous slide?
It's from, yes, are you talking about the 6.8, Mike, and the employee benefits, that first line?
No, I'm talking about the difference
between 14 and 20 there.
Oh, well, the 20 is the appropriation. And the 14 is the additional amount we spend that's not part of the appropriation for education. So you appropriate one line for education, that's the 2981,080.
Okay.
We actually spend another 14 million on education through these other funding, having to fund these other things. So they're not in the appropriation, just like in any other department budget, when you see like the police department budget or you see the fire department budget, we don't break out the benefits for the police officers, or we don't break out the benefits for fire. It's all in the benefits in the city. I mean, under the, health insurance line. But when we do our reporting for net school spending to the state, to DESE and to DOR, we have to present this information. We have to break it out because it's part of our calculation for net school spending that the state requires us to do annually to show that we're meeting, the needs of the students for DESE's requirements. So these slides, I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I just wanted to jump to these slides to just show that these come right from the DESE website, and you can see them. We took them right off of DESE. So this also shows, basically this is just budgeted. This isn't the actuals for FY23 because we're not done, but this is what we budgeted. We had a line item appropriation, and then we had an additional amount that we funded, and we're estimating we're going to give them $31 million. So in 22, which was the year before, it was a total of the 28. So that's where we're coming up with the additional amounts. And that doesn't cover, that's not showing, this doesn't show transportation. So a big part of our, or not a big part, but some of our employee benefits also include the transportation we provide at the school. We have employees that provide that service. And so we pay benefits for those too. So again, we can include that when we calculate our net school spending for the state.
Okay, so it's just that these slides followed the other ones. Like I said, I could see the line item in the first ones. So the other 6 is coming from these future slides, which, have to do with those line item things like administration, blah, blah. But are the employee benefits line, the 6831041, those are straight fringe? And are those not included also in part of that line item, or is that just separate?
It's totally separate. It's fringe, and it's not included in the line. It's not included in the appropriation that we give to the school.
Okay, so the other ones were in the future slides you were just going forward to. Is that correct?
So it's the same thing here. So this shows you what's in the school appropriation on this, where it says school committee. It shows you the details of their appropriation. And then on the city side, it shows you what we reported for DESE. And again, those numbers are the administration, the employer, retirement contributions, the insurance. So that, again, that's all coming from the larger city budget funding.
So essentially, some of these things are paid for by 2 different, part of appropriation and part of then the additional funding that we're doing?
Yeah, it's all part of the appropriation, but it's not in the school line appropriation. It's in different parts of the budget.
Okay, gotcha.
The thing about just going to explain, the net school spending piece is important to keep track of because it is a requirement. We are consistently over net school spending in this community.
So I'm just going to say two things. First, I'm going to disregard that in my thinking because three things. I just saw it. What we said actually for debt for the schools, it's not close to what I have. The high school debt, what we're paying for the high school is $1.7 million. But overall, if you said that we spent 36 million of our total budget on the school, I actually am going to go through and add up what we spent on all the rest because I think we'd be well over what we have just said for the total operating budget is. And I because I'm seeing it for the first time, I'm not really able to speak to that, but I think I'll be back with my pen and pencil tonight. So I'm going to say, go ahead if anybody else wants to talk.
So I have a few things. One is a request, and we spoke, Diana, and you shared really wanting to help us understand. And this is the first, these numbers are not in the budget book, and this is the first time I'm seeing them. And there is no way that I, or anyone else I know, can sit here just saying, oh, here are the numbers, and digest them, or comprehend them, or make any well-informed decision based upon them. So the information that we're getting needs to come beforehand. And that's just one thing. So that's a request that if the intention really is to help us understand, please help us understand by giving us the information with enough time. I've dedicated several work days to trying to understand this situation here. I don't speak budget. And so the more, but I will, and I'm learning to, but the more information you can give us from before, the more that trust will be built and the more I will be able to make well-informed decisions. So that's a real heartfelt request. A couple of other things. One is, Mayor, you stated that we're over net school spending, and that is the norm for schools. That's how it should be. So that's not like some additional great thing to be
No,
saying.
I wasn't saying it for that reason. I was just drawing your attention to the fact that is consistently, you can see that there, consistently what we do to meet the responsibilities that we have to the schools.
And that's great, and we should be, and that's not above.
Not all communities do,
Most communities
but most do.
do.
Yeah.
And so it's not some amazing, we should be. So a couple of other things. One is, I'm still, can you go to the previous slide, please? So I'm still trying to make sense of this. Like I just went to the DPW bit here, and so I'm trying to see like, how are these numbers that, for example, just to take a number, that 727,000, how that's extrapolated. Part of my challenge in understanding the budget book is that I'm not seeing totals. Like I go to DPW and I see like administration and engineering, a piece for that, and the expenses for wages for that, the expenses for that. I go to see the highways, I don't have to read them all through, but I'm not, first of all, seeing totals and maybe I'm missing something, but I'm not seeing where the total is. And so therefore it's also hard for me to extrapolate. Well, so I would like to know the total, and then I would think, okay, you're taking a percentage of that. These numbers would be helpful to understand, what does that mean that 727,000 is going?
So these numbers are not, well, some of them are percentages if we don't, if we don't have the breakdown, but some of it is actual number. Like when we do the end of the year report, we code the things in Munis appropriately, like, so we don't have to just code it for the account number and the location or division or whatever. We can go into even more detail. So the city accountant will code the things that DPW, that are toward the school, but they're still DPW. So she, at the end of the year, can just sort of print out or, manifest a report that basically has the detail of that. So we're using the actual, she put this down, this is an estimate because it's the end of the year, FY23, we're not there yet. So it's absolutely is an estimate, but it is based on all of the calculations that she would use to do her end of the year report for FY23 and all of the numbers that we have budgeted currently. Okay, so it is an estimate, but at the end of the year, she will do that reconciliation, and that's what she reports to DESI that goes on to that end of the year report. And I do want to say, I have only worked, this is the 5th community I believe I've been in, and I have worked in a community that didn't make net school spending, and it was unfortunate, but they do, we, as Jenny pointed out, we're not a wealthy community, so we do have to be watchful of it. And so, keeping track of this stuff is really important. And so, continue to do that. But if we didn't meet it, we would be penalized. We don't want any part of that. So, I do think it's good. But yeah, so I can't, it isn't, it is an estimate, but it is literally extrapolated out of the end of the year report that the city accountant does for that city.
Okay. And do you have the behind the scenes, like how that is?
I can give you some of that detail, yeah, what makes up those numbers, because yeah, I'm not sure, I know DPW Central Services, we do fleet maintenance on the vans, so there's things that go into that, DPW does work over at the schools, they take care of some part of the schools. So
Central
that's,
maintenance
yeah,
does all the different work on the HVAC and so forth. There's a lot of different services.
right.
Point of that is
IT,
the services.
IT stuff over there.
that
do
we
some of
provide.
that. Right. So all that, they're part of our audit, everything we do. When we do everything, it's all part of the school too, so anyway. But yes, I can get some more detail on that. You can't see him, but John has his hand up.
Oh, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the issue when you're talking about services that gets a little complicated is like, say those DPW employees would be salaried. So are you taking a percentage of their salary? Because their salaries would be they would help a lot of different departments in the city. So, I mean, I just see a really huge number there under central services. And so it just brings to the point that I wonder if you start calculating in that way, we would easily go way over our total budget. If you started calculating what the DPW does, for instance, for every department.
Right. Well, we're mandated to do it by Mass General Law and, because we have to do the net school spending. And also we do it in concert with the school. We don't just come up with the numbers. The school often will provide the numbers or are provided the end of the year report to confirm the numbers. So we're not coming up with them in a vacuum. We're in agreement with the school when we submit this end of the year report.
No, and that's great. It's just, this is our first time and I've been on it. This is my 4th year and we've never seen it broken down this way. So I'm just trying to come up with these questions as I am looking at these numbers.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, John. I think you're asking a similar question to Catherine in that you'd like to kind of understand what's making up these numbers, where they're being made up from. So I can get you that information.
Thanks.
Anything else, Judy?
No.
And another question, you'll send these, can you send us these slides?
I was gonna put them in the shared.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, that's great.
So net school spending, again, just to show, so this also shows the chapter 70 portion of it. Because I know there was some discussion about we do get chapter 70, so that's correct. So this shows our total net school spending and then what we do, get in chapter 70. So, again, just kind of a visual presentation on that. And again, just shows our.
Could you go back?
Sure.
Okay, so the blue line,
To chapter 70.
which was 16. Okay. All right, Mike, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask a more general question, I guess. Dana, you're saying, did you say you were going to share these through email or that they're up on the shared drive?
I thought I would, they're not yet, Mike, but I was going to put them in the city council shared drive.
Okay. So I guess maybe this is not even just for this exact instance, but in general, I would say personally, to kind of echo what John was saying earlier, this isn't our full-time job. So if things are added to the shared drive, and I don't know that this is being wholly done across the board, but even just if that comes up as an email, hey guys, this got added to the shared drive, even if it's not an attachment to an email, of course, who wants one more email, right? But that's almost like a ping for us to look at. But if something gets, and I'm not just saying it, like I said, just for this purpose, but as a general thing for all departments, if something gets uploaded to the shared drive, if there's no alert that something got uploaded, I mean, I'm certainly not sitting there scrolling the shared drive on any given day, thinking what was new since, last week or last Tuesday or whatever it is. But when something pings me to be like, hey, take a look at this, whether or not it comes as an attachment form in our email, or the email could simply say like, hey, this has now been uploaded to the shared drive if you'd like to take a look at it. I don't know. That was just a food for thought on
Yes.
on making sure that the communication line is solid between all facets of the government.
I totally agree with you, Mike. I think we need an email every time something's added to the share drive. Otherwise, yeah, I checked just in case something slipped in and we didn't find it, but absolutely, I'm with you.
Mike, there's some way that I have on my Google, I don't know how it's signed up, but I do get an alert. So I must have signed up for some alert, and it might be through my Gmail. But so noted, and I'll let Tammy know. Because I guess I thought that when I do that, I normally communicate with Tammy, and I just sort of presumed Tammy was communicating. So maybe, I don't know, nothing on Tammy. That might have been an incorrect presumption. So.
No, I
So-
mean, I'm not,
so
that's why
noted.
I was asking, like, I was just saying it as a general thing. Like, I know we definitely get a lot of emails from Tammy, like, which are a lot of forwards of like, hey, this thing has been presented, to them. And then we're, to obviously to not violate open meeting law and all of those sorts of rules, we end up getting, duplicate emails and things like that. But no, I wasn't saying this at all about, like I said, about this. This just spurred a thought that I wonder if there are more things that are presumptively thought that are shared and understood from different departments, that the information is pinged and readily available. Like you're saying, if you get alerts, maybe my account isn't set up to get alerts in the same way, but that would be cool if everybody was kind of on the same page is where I was going from, whether or not it be, it doesn't matter what department, like whatever was being updated, if it's something that comes to the shared drive, to be like, hey, look at this department uploaded, this file. And sometimes it will probably it may end up being something that's irrelevant for certain folks, but more relevant for other folks. I don't know. It was just more of a thought on the systems of the intersharing between departments in the city.
One other information request with this, as I sit here and look at this slide and I look at the green and the blue, I would love to know what those precise numbers are.
Yes.
Do you have that?
yes.
Could you please share that with us?
Yeah, actually, what I can do when it was kind of our first run take, we did a lot of slides, and we also winnowed down, added, and so, but I think that you're absolutely right, and maybe that's something, if we can just update the slide deck and have all the numbers put on, so I think it's just a check box that we didn't check.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yes. To the course of making it more readable. Live and learn. Okay, again, just to kind of show in general, the school and the city, that we are mostly talking about in this budget that we have, it's a lot of personnel costs and a smaller amount of expenses. So it just shows kind of each of us have this little pie of expenses and then a big chunk of personnel costs. And that's, what we think, basically that's just, wages and benefits. And it's not distributed, that's basically just based on salaries. So some of this is also benefits. Okay, financial reserves. I just want to talk a little bit about this because we're going to talk about debt, and you might want to talk about, adding things to the budget or what we have available if you want to make changes to the budget. I just want to emphasize that that my predecessor had been doing a very concentrated effort of creating financial reserves, and it has served us extremely well in our bonding. Although our bond rating hasn't changed off the AA-, we definitely have a stable outlook, and it has a lot to do with our reserves and the way, I gave Jenny a copy of our audit. We did get our audit in, and I will put the audit in the shared file too, Mike. Just so you know, we got the city audit, we have the PDF of it, and so we'll get that up into the shared
Will it
file.
ping me when you do that?
Can it's an email
Just
with
an email.
Ping you on an email, sure.
If you want a bulleted list of what's in the shared drive.
And then, so, you know, our audit too shows that we had a really great, you know, we had a great undesignated fund balance in 22 was our audit. So, you know, still strong showing at that point. So, you know, we have this year, we are doing a lot of projects, and so we are managing our debt very tightly and very closely. But again, the reserves help to cushion us and help our bond rating. And not to mention if we have any kind of emergency, a health emergency, oh, who knows, we might have one of those. Natural weather disaster, anything that we ever would need, we would have those reserves, including, you know, stabilization, which I don't know when's the last time you dipped into it. I haven't seen it for some time, so.
took out 100 and then put 100 back in.
Stabilization, yeah.
Yes,
In general,
general stabilization, we took out 100 and then returned it.
yeah, excellent, so I'd love to put more in if we had a time when we had excess or, you know, but it's not this year so far.
So I have a question about that. So I asked for all of that to come to us. The reserves, is that on the next slide? No.
Reserves, I've sent you.
No, we
Yeah.
get all of that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, no, I don't have it on the slides.
oh, no, that's okay. I just have a question about that before we go on. Because I had a question about, pension stabilization. I sent you a question about that and you said that we don't have a pension stabilization.
Correct.
And so in March of 2021, we created a pension stabilization fund and we put $1 million in it. It was.
You mean our OPEB, the OPEB?
Nope. Counselor Forgy and Counselor Bottomley and I were there at that Ways and Means. And we were there at the budget meeting where we voted in $1 million to go into pension stabilization. The OPEB stabilization and the OPEB trust had existed prior to that. The OPEB trust started in 2014 or earlier. We got a report on that in 2022. There was like $1.7 million in that. And in the pension stabilization, I have the report here from June of 2022. And it shows the $1 million that we had in there. And then yesterday, or whenever it was that I got an email from you, said we don't have that account anymore.
I don't know what you're
We
referring to.
We do have a
8407.
pension stabilization, we do.
Oh, wait, what is
8407.
it an OPEB for what type? I asked Angelica and she said we didn't. We had OPEB stabilization. So what is the
No, we have
pension?
both. So we have an OPEB stabilization and a pension stabilization account.
So what is the purpose of the pension stabilization?
I don't know. I wasn't the one who created it, but.
What is the purpose?
It was to be funding the pensions for retirees. The OPEB stabilization was their other benefits. And I think just to state what I got yesterday said that we had 9.02%, or what I got on the 11th, 9.02% in reserves. We should be adding $1 million to that because I'm glad to know that account number 8407 is still here.
Well, yeah.
It's got $1 million, it should have.
She told me that it was a different, you know, I think she said we had like an agency account for the retirement, Kelly, but she didn't say that it was a stabilization account, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the pension stabilization was created. You know, we had the OPEB trust, which we still have, and then the OPEB stabilization. And then I think when Liz was around, they created this other account, but I'm not sure what the purpose of it exactly was.
I asked the city accountant and she doesn't have a record of it, so we'll have to.
We're reconciling every year, so she should have.
Well, maybe she's thinking it's something else. I mean, I think she's referring to it as something else, so I'll have to
Account
determine.
number
Because I
8407.
specifically asked her. She told me we have an agency account that we basically do put retirement, it does have something to do with the retirement and how we pay the retirement system. But I'm not sure why I can't even understand what a pension stabilization would be for, because we don't pay pensions. We pay, unless it was to use for our retirement assistant. It's to pay the city's appropriation of.
I just was so surprised to have gotten the information this time that it wasn't there, that we didn't have it. And I thought, well, that's good, that's an extra million.
I looked, when I did,
Yes, but I mean, it's money that was not,
okay, yes.
I keep these things, I print them out just to make sure.
I'll verify and find out what the purpose is.
Well,
Okay.
I'm sure Liz probably, if you asked her, she would know what the purpose is.
Okay,
I think
thank
that
you,
was the
Kelly.
whole
It was
idea.
to people's pensions that were retired people's pensions was what we were told. And I
Paid
questioned,
by the state, however.
No, they're paid by the retirement system.
That's what I mean, the retirement.
Yeah, we don't.
so I just want to make sure on this account, because I was told yesterday that we didn't have that. I thought, okay, we certainly could, we put that in. We voted it in out of free cash. And last year, it was given to me in the list of stabilizations, and this
Okay.
year it was not.
All right, well, I will verify. I might just be, the city accountant has it listed, somehow differently. But okay.
Could you, when you look for that, Diana, could you please send us all the information on?
Yeah, I'll update. I sent to Ginny. Not sure how it's getting disseminated,
Yeah.
but I sent the updated stabilization balances, so I'll just add it. If it is a stabilization account, I'll add it and send it.
Okay. And who would be the one to find out what the order was? I imagine that the initial order had some rationale to it.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it.
Or-
We'll have to look at
Fiscal
the
year.
motion and see.
21058. The financial order was 21058, and it was voted on March 17th of 2021.
21. Okay.
Holy cow.
All right, I'll take a look. Thank you.
I just had
In
a
the details, huh?
quick question. So anything that's in a stabilization account could, in theory, any stabilization money can be taken out and transferred to an operating budget with a financial order from the mayor. Is that correct?
The stabilization funds are restricted. Basically, they're for special purposes. So the general stabilization, yes, it could be used for any general purpose. It has to be, there would have to be a financial order, and it needs a 2/3 vote. And then we have capital stabilization, contractual stabilization, and the OPEB. And if we have a retirement or pension stabilization, they would all presumably, those would have to be spent for those specific purposes.
So we couldn't take out of, say, pension stabilization and put it somewhere else.
You could maybe use it to offset, if it was for pension, if it was to offset somehow our pension, like our assessment to the retirement system, which we have in this budget, we could use it for that if that was the designated purpose of it. So you might be able to use it for something in the operating budget if it is in line with what the purpose of the fund was, except for the general, which again can be used generally.
Has to be like for like.
So when we created this, however, we were told, and I thought I read Massachusetts general law with the lawyer on here, but not for public comment, but that it could be with a financial order, you could use that for any legitimate expenditure throughout the city. And I know, because I just rewatched that meeting, because I was wondering what happened to that million, that we could use it for any legitimate financial issue, that it needed an order and 9 votes. And so I'll look at the law on it, but that is, I know factually what we were told, because where we already had an OPEB trust and an OPEB stabilization account, I questioned putting that million in there. And to know now that today we didn't even know we had it. So it's a real windfall. So there you go.
Mike has his hand up.
Go ahead, Mike. Yes.
No, I was just gonna say, I think this is I didn't think we were gonna have this kind of question come up tonight, but I think it's actually a pretty beneficial question coming up tonight, coinciding with something I came across recently at work that had nothing to do with the city of Greenfield, but another municipality that I'm really glad we're having this conversation on keeping track of where some accounts are, because the story, I guess you should say, I guess I could say that I'd heard from this person who works closely with another municipality. There was some years back an account created for specific purposes that after multiple turnovers of city government or town government, it was being rolled over because it was in that kind of account. And then to a certain point, no one knew why this money was in an account anymore. So when it got brought up, they essentially, the government of that town voted to essentially move it into the general fund, however they did. And then like a year or two later, there were people who had worked with the municipality that were like, hey, this money's in this account, right? And they're like, what are you talking about? And they had no idea what they were talking about because it had already been moved and it was really earmarked for a specific purpose. And now it's creating a legal thing. It's creating a problem. So I think this is at least a good conversation to make sure we're definitely keeping track of whatever our accounts or stabilization funds or however they're set up, and making sure all parties kind of have an idea of these things going forward, so that something like that doesn't happen with us. Because I'm recognizing the sheer coincidence of having heard this story like 2 days ago, and then kind of collating it with what we're talking about right now, that the terminology could be, again, to overuse the term now, the devil's in the details, but the terminology for that, I hope that everyone would know what all of any kind of funds that have been earmarked, or whether they're stabilization funds or whatever they are, that have been voted on, approved, and set aside, and regardless of who shifts, whether it's mayors or financial directors or city councilors, like these should all be kind of, the notes should be there for sure, that anybody stepping into any of those positions should be able to recognize what the exact intention of these funds are for, so that they don't, as I said, I'm not saying that we've done it here, but as I'm using the example of this other town, that this earmarked money, essentially because no one knew what to do with it, got voted, however their rules were, got voted to just kind of go back into the general. And then when people tried to draw on it for the appropriate purposes that somebody else knew it was there, they were like, what are you talking about? So I just thought that was
Thank you.
it's good and pertinent that and thank you, Jenny, for keeping up on the minutia that I think a lot gets swept under, or not even just swept under the rug, just gets lost a lot of times, for
Right.
nobody's fault. If there's no way of really keeping up on it, with transitions and whatnot. Trust me, I'm not indicating anything nefarious or anything like that. I'm just saying things like that can happen. So it's good to always have a finger on the pulse of.
So I'm going to read, this is Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B, Stabilization Funds Establishment. At the time of creating any stabilization fund, the city, town, or district shall specify, and at any later time may alter the purpose of the fund, which may be for any lawful purpose, including without limitation, an approved school project pursuant to Chapter 70B, which I don't know that is, but I could read it, or any other purpose for which the city, town, or district may lawfully borrow money. The specification and any alteration of purpose and any appropriation of funds from such funds shall be approved by a 2/3 vote, except as in chapter blah, blah, blah. Now, that is not the whole law, but I thought, I do remember being present and being told that we could take that out for anything. I think that's an important thing to know.
We do have, I found the financial order, copy of the financial order. I don't know if it actually passed. I assume if you say it did. So it was, the purpose was for funding the future pension assessment schedule for the Greenfield contributory retirement system. So you could fund, so to answer your question, Mike, you could fund your retirement system payment out of that. Whatever we have in the budget for that, maybe Christine's raising her hand.
I don't agree with that. Go ahead.
But yeah, that's
Go
what
ahead,
you
Christine.
could fund.
Okay, thank you. You got it. There's unfunded liability. It's a huge unfunded liability. It goes out 20 or 30 years.
Right.
And I think that was the attempt that the town made in order to put money aside, hopefully to offset some of those payments as they rose and got heavier and heavier with ensuing years. And oftentimes you will see that there is like, we want to transfer out of OPEB stabilization into OPEB trust, those types of things, which I know, again, that fund was set up for that particular purpose. So just for clarification, I think that there is a purpose to this fund. I would not be in favor of, well, I couldn't vote on it, full disclosure. I am a retiree. But if I had a vote, I would not vote in favor of removing this money for other uses, because the day of reckoning will come and we'll be looking for those dollars. Thank you.
Very well spoken, Councillor Forgy. It wasn't that, it was just that certainly we all knew, we've seen the chart, what's going on with the retirement and what we have to put in there. That was a convincing thing. I said I voted against it in subcommittee and voted in favor of it on council floor, because I think that's absolutely true. I'm just saying that these stabilization accounts, you can change the purpose if we want to take the money out. And we have probably, I don't know, 10.5% in our stabilization accounts, and we don't have enough money in the operating budget. And I thought, at the end of our budget book, it does say that your capital projects and your operating have to intersect. And we have increases this year, that are relative to the capital projects. So I think, we have to actually make sure that we can fund the operating budget. All right, I'm gonna let you continue.
I don't misunderstand. So
That was excellent, thank you.
the intent of the stabilization funds is specified, and according to MGL, we can transfer funds. It is legal to transfer funds from one account to another. I see you shaking your head. Do you disagree with that, Mayor, or is
I
that?
do. It's for the designated purpose, which was stated if you carefully read that law.
I think what Jenny was saying is you probably can vote to change the purpose
You
of the
can,
stabilization
yes,
fund. Yeah, but you can't just use it for other purposes.
Right.
Yeah, but we could go from point A to point B
Okay.
with the money just because.
But with a financial order, we could vote to change purpose. We agree on that? Or maybe we need.
I'd have to look and see what it would take to actually change purpose. It may, I don't know if it's as simple as just like you would normally take to do a step, to set it up or.
I think Councilor Forgy offers a cautionary tale, though. That is a huge number, and it goes out for years and years and years. So the point of that fund was to begin to put money into it for whatever reasons since 21. I can imagine all of them, because we've been here since then. So we've seen each year as a tight budget year. We haven't put more money into the pension stabilization fund, but we could, but it is to ultimately pay the piper when we need to for those retirement assessments. So it would not, I think she's correct, be wise to look at that. But it's good to look at all the options.
Okay. Can I follow up to that?
I wasn't trying to change the purpose or take the money out. It's just that we had $4 million at the beginning of this year, you know, in free cash. And we, in good faith, went forward and put many of it in different compensated absences, stabilization, 2 million too in capital stabilization. And now there are some issues with and with over 10% in savings and stabilizations, we are having some difficulty with the operating. So that was my point. But why don't you,
Can I just follow up? And my question, I hear the cautionary tale that the Councilor Portree is telling. And my question was more in general about, you know, there's a lot of money as Councilor DeSorder just referenced in capital stabilization. And I would say that operating right now is a priority. So that's where that question was coming from.
Okay, you have a couple questions. I don't know if you.
yes, go ahead.
Diana's getting back to the slides.
So I just wanted to say, because I raised this question we were talking about, I was just talking about, we have to talk about what's possible. It may not be wise to do it, and the council could have that discussion, but oftentimes we ask what's possible, and we're told no, which is, I think, partially why we created the legal expense fund, so that we could get other answers. So I realize that you know, the mayor may not want us to do something, but I think it's important that as a council, we discuss what's actually possible. And that's my only point on that.
Thank you. And Councilor Forgy, did you still have your hand up? All right.
Hearing the end. So just to show you, you talked a little about free cash and how much we had last year. So this is our free cash history. It's a little, you know, it's not consistent, so certainly cannot be counted on to be, you know, at a certain amount. We've had some good, you know, good fortune the last couple of years, but in 2020, I think I'm not sure it shows, but I think we might have even had a tiny negative. Mm-hmm. Definitely did not have a positive, so it's not even on the chart. Our general stabilization again since 2006. David keeps going in and out. What is he doing? The general stabilization, again, you know, in the early, you know, 2016 to 20, kind of like, you know, up and down a little. And then we've been, again, I think with Liz's strong presence, trying to get those numbers to stay. And I hear what John's saying, but again, it's really important, you know, to have those reserves for a variety of reasons. But capital as well, one of the things that I think the mayor has been really very responsible about is keeping the capital plan going. We inherited a bunch of deferred maintenance, and then you can see in 19 and 20 we had no capital stabilization, but we built it up, and now we've been really trying to very you know, keep a close management of the capital funding, the capital plan funding, so we keep a good amount in the capital stabilization, which is also something that's been recommended by our financial advisor and our bond rating agency. Again, with contractual stabilization, it's a little bit all over the place again, but this is used to fund retro for contracts primarily. So we are trying to do contracts prospectively going forward, not you know, retroactively. But when we have had to do it, we have had these funds to use. So we'll be using, as you noticed, something about $375 out of this for the school. So we're going to be using a pretty big chunk of this. Is going to go off to the school for the contracts that we just settled with the teachers. John, Mike had his hand up. Jenny, go ahead.
Is it
Yeah.
just to be clear on the chart here? This is what was allocated each year? Is that?
These are the actuals, Mike. This is the actual that we had. The balances in there.
The balances
at year end. Yeah.
With no draw against, like, this is after, or I'm sorry, this is after the draws against.
Exactly. It's the year end balances. So basically what we had at the year end.
Okay, thank you.
again, the OPEB stabilization, as Jenny noted, was just established, and I don't know if it might have been established earlier, but we started funding it in 2020. I thought it had been established in 19, but we did start funding it in 2020, and we put money in, and then in the last, we did take a little bit out to use toward our other toward our retiree health insurance and those costs that have been escalating. We talked about a little bit. Bond rating, I just wanted to mention, our bond rating, we just had our bond rating call. We just went out for our ban, our short-term borrowing, and we had a very, it's pretty consistent. They say that we do have, because of our conservative budgeting practices, that they expect that we'll have at least a break-even performance, which means that they did feel we would be able to maintain our liquidity and be able to pay the debt. So it's just a little excerpt from the information that we got from the bonding agency.
Mike, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I'm just trying to understand because like I said, the graph, the previous graphs, actually, not this one. So those are all, I almost feel like this kind of bar graph, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody else thinks I'm totally crazy. What we put in each year versus what gets taken out. Like you're saying, this is the summation at the end of the year. So at the end of 2021, for instance, we had 250K in OPEB stabilization. I'm just thinking like having the idea of, especially when we get financial orders that are like, oh, do we want to contribute more to this? Do we want to contribute more to capital stabilization? Do we want to contribute more to contract stabilization? And then we're seeing like what we've put in and what the use has been. Does that make sense? Versus now what we see here is like the net, like, okay, we had 250K left in 2021 when it was all said and done after we've put money in and money's been taken out. And then so we get to 2022 and we see by the end of that, whatever X amount we put in that we are not seeing, but by the end, we still had 200,000 left over. I don't know if that would be a different way to look at when we're going forward, when we get those kind of financial orders. Like we always see at the bottom of financial or what the current amount is in there. But I guess what I'm thinking of is looking at this and being like, all right, well, what would be the realistic, should we really be getting into this much minutia of finance instead of just letting you do your job? I also recognize that irony in it, but we are supposed to be fiscally responsible for this stuff. So that's the only reason why I'm asking, like, if other kind of comparisons going forward could be like, rather than the sum or the net end, almost because this shows a trend in one way, but it doesn't necessarily show a trend of what we put into it versus what was taken out of it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that goes for the last like couple slides that were there. Like they all look good. They look trending. They look like we're doing, as you said, like smart things to build our capital or our stabilization funds in a certain way, but they may not necessarily reflect, as we've talked about, i.e. the police budget this year with the amount of retirees and the amount of, the leaving, where they might have an impact on contract stabilization. So if we fast forward to next year where, all right, we appropriated, I forget how many, I think it was a couple $100,000, $300,000, $400,000 to contract stabilization, knowing that we might have to offset that might not be as clear if we were looking at this next year without that previous knowledge. Is that making any sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I think again, to what you said, I mean, it is showing the net results. So it's showing, I mean, the idea is to show that if we did use some money, we were also putting some money in. So the idea is at the end of the year, the way that the bonding agency and DOR likes to see things going is that you're whatever your ins and outs are, you're still ahead at the end of the year, you have a higher reserve than you had at the end of last year. So that's kind of how we look at it. I think I gave Jenny copies, and I think you're going to be getting copies of the audit. And I think they're in the audit, I believe there is a page that shows the other fund, fund balances. And it like on a balance sheet, it shows what the asset, the liability, the expenses, you know what I mean? It shows all of that. So you can see the ins and outs. It might not have the detail of the ins and outs, but you can, see the amounts. And I mean, we do have reports that show the ins and outs. But again, it's kind of a lot of detail. I'm not sure. The point was just to kind of show what the balances are that we're showing in these accounts year over year.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so bond rating, again, just total outstanding debt. So we're getting up near 60, I think. We have 40 on the books now for long term, and then we're adding another 20 in short term. So, this number is about 55, but you're going to see in 24 or 23 and getting into 24, we're up around 60. So that's our debt. And then, of course, this is our debt service. So that's going to be different. That's what the debt service is primarily showing you the long-term debt. So that's our bonded debt. That's what we're required to report to DOR. That's our requirement to stay, within our 5% of the EQV. So that shows our bonded debt. It doesn't show the picture of our short-term debt. And Ginny and I, have had a conversation about that, which we're cognizant of. And so, as I said, it's important that we stay on top of our short-term debt payments as well and getting some of those, bond premiums back to reducing that short term. So we're not bonding all of that. That's the goal. So this is a little bit, I had to kind of go outside of the slide a little to try to get it all in there. But it does show just up to 30. It shows, this is the projected debt service schedule. So it still shows our 4 million that we expect to do each every couple years. We take all of our ban and we permanently bond it. And so we try to keep that in the $4 million range. And you have to remember, sometimes we have an authorization to borrow, but we may not borrow that money for or bond it for quite some time, depending on how the project goes and when the money's needed. And we're very, Kelly's on the line. She's very, very conscientious about only borrowing, what's really needed for the project. We monitor projects very closely to make sure that we're not, borrowing ahead of the needs. And so this kind of shows our debt service this is our full debt picture, because this is your bands that will go into your long-term bonds in 24, 26, 28, 30. So it shows we're still, and again, it's a conservative estimate on the operating budget, which means that would even be a lower percentage if the operating budget went up more. But it still shows us staying really consistently in the 8% range for our debt service. So given that we don't have, the mayor has recommended debt policy that she puts in the book every year, but I'm going to really be pushing on her this year to do some adopted financial policies and really codify that, because again, that's something that looks really good in our debt picture, and our bonding agency would like to see us kind of lock in that 8%, cap. So. And again, so the other thing about, I'm sorry, just to one additional point about this. So the other thing I would note is all of these charts are made off of, schedules. So this is made off of a debt schedule. So, some of that information is also available. I don't know what has been shared with, with you guys, but just note that, we have the full debt schedule that we've got from our financial advisor, and that's how we put these numbers together. And again, the debt obviously in the future years is estimated in terms of interest rates and whatnot, but we do try to do that with our financial advisors.
Those shades of blue are real close to each other.
Yeah. And it really means, I guess I think what it shows us, and we've had this conversation internally, I think we've had it in meetings as well, is that we have no available, really project capacity until probably about 2036. It's off this chart. It goes another 5 years, kind of like this, if we keep going every couple of years with our capital plan, and that's if we keep our capital plan going at what the rate we've been going. But then that's when the library and fire station, it starts to drop off and things, it allows room for, additional projects at that point. But we understand that it's very limited in terms of what kinds of additional projects we could take on at this point.
Oh, that noted, I was actually just pointing out the shades of blue on the graph. There's distinctions between them, but man, that's really hard to see which one is which.
I know, that's the other thing, trying to present a visual of these things is so hard to try to, we looked at, literally when we're putting the information together, you can pick 7 different charts. And we really did try to figure out the ones to best show it. But, I think this is just kind of shows each layer, coming on, and it just still shows that we're still trying, as some falls off and some adds on, we're still trying to stay within that, target of under 8%. Okay. So, and again, this just shows a little bit of our expense, how our expenses are trending. I think the big one is unclassified, that's kind of what obviously we talked about education and some of the bigger parts of the budget, but the unclassified, which is all our insurances, our FERCog assessment, all of that, workers' comp, and it's basically employee benefits and employee, personnel costs, fixed costs that are related to that we have to fund. And those will continue to go up as salaries, benefits, and, those items go up. And then I just did a quick thing. This is more when I put this out and I send you your email ping and put it in the shared drive. I just wanted to do a couple financial indicators. Ginny had noted that she had gone and looked at some of Northampton stuff, and I noticed that in some of their trends, they, had put some stuff, and I just thought it was interesting to kind of look at it. The tax rate, doesn't have a lot of meaning because that kind of tracks with the value. But you can kind of see how it's been, it's kind of gone over the years, just dropped down in 23 because we were able to use some free cash that we had available to reduce the tax rate. And then that sort of shows you the property values, that they're kind of consistently been going up slowly. And again, once we add the numbers onto these, like Catherine noted, each one will have what the number is at the top. I think that will be helpful for you to see too. I'm sorry we didn't get that in there, but again, these were just kind of visuals to show that things are consistently, our values are going up consistently. Our tax bills, they consistently go up regardless. And then I thought this was really interesting because when I was trying to come up with a new growth number, I really wanted to use a 10-year average. And we had this huge jump in 18. And so it was putting our 10-year average up, even higher than, I think it was around what we had last year. And that seemed high to me. So I did use a little conservative number. But you can kind of see we had a little jump in 18. That may have been, I don't know if we had, that was when the year that hospital, there was something built at Franklin Medical Center. And that might have been, I think that's a for-profit thing. So I think that could have been when that got on the tax rolls, because that's the only thing I could think of got developed. Yeah, that surgery center, yeah.
What is CIP, commercial?
That's, that just means commercial, industrial, personal property. So it's everything besides residential. It's all of our property besides residential. So residential is the blue.
Randy's doing a great job with that. And I imagine it will be on track or better actually for the new growth. That's my guess. I think he really knows.
I think Randy's here. You hear that, Randy? Kudos.
Thank you.
I watched that like a hawk.
And so again, this just shows our levy, our levy is going up, and it kind of just shows the part of it that's residential, commercial. I'm kind of also showing this because I know you've been having discussion about the industrial piece, and, that's the piece that, ideally, we'd like to see grow a little bit. That would really, would help the tax base. Again, these are just our revenue trends, so this shows our tax levy and our state aid and how much those are, kind of consistently going up. You'll see the CPA will start, the top one will start to go up a little as we start to accrue more CPA funds.
I just wanted to say also for the treasurer that our uncollected taxes has decreased almost by half. So
Yes.
kudos to the treasury department. Also, that was
Yes.
on that DLS website. It's almost down by half. So good for you, Kelly, also.
It's amazing. Yes, it's fantastic. It's
That was huge.
notable that it's below, I think it's like less than 3%
Yes. It was a
uncollected.
huge, I mean,
It's almost like unheard of in the municipal world, so it is a huge,
thank you.
huge thing for Kelly. Thank you, Kelly.
I want to know if I'm number one in the state. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, check it out. We could be. Come on, we need to set some good records, right?
It's good to have a goal.
I'll check it, I'll look.
Good to have a goal.
When you rap on someone's door with brass knuckles, they pay their debts,
Just because I'm Italian does not mean that's what I'm doing. That's not what I'm doing.
And so this I just threw up there, I don't really know what Greenfield like comps itself to, but I know we do talk a lot about Gardner and East Hampton kind of being comparable communities. I threw in Leicester and North Adams because they have a demographic that's somewhat similar to ours, which is it's not, they have a similar demographic and facing some similar challenges around development and stuff. So I thought that was interesting to show a little bit. And Ludlow's kind of the outlier. They're probably a wealthy community, wealthier.
I'll just say, I use all of those for comps because they were the ones that we got when we first became, along with Agawam. But the community comparisons by function, you must have gone on the DESI website. I use the DOR.
Yeah, no, I think these are from DOR. Yeah, no, I think these also came from DLS. Yeah, DLS has, as you know, you can go on and you can compare to the other 350 cities and towns and, you can do a bunch of different types of, different comparatives. But I just was kind of taking a look because I do like to come to Gardner and East Hampton pretty frequently. And, as you said, Agawam, but West Springfield, I like to look at, but they are not exactly, they have a little bit different, demographics. So, but it's good just to kind of see where we're at and, so
East Hampton has a similar sized budget. And I
Yeah.
think West Springfield's larger with about 26,000 to 28 for a population.
Exactly, right. So we're kind of in a little niche spot in some of our stuff, so. Questions?
Any other questions?
We're a group of questions, aren't we? Yeah, so anybody out there in television land first have any questions? Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I was going back to the debt. I'm still learning what bands and bonds and all of this are, but I was struck by on page 176 and then 177 and 178 by the difference between what was in the adopted budget and what was in the amended budget. So for folks who don't have the budget, we have state qualified bond over $1 million more than what was in the adopted budget. We have state qualified bond interest as about $750,000 more. And then in interest on notes payable, we have an increase. It was the same adopted and amended. This is a separate thing that in the mayor's budget, there is It's $500,000 more than the previous budget. And I don't know what these numbers mean, but I'm really struck that that's a lot of money. Can you explain what this means?
Yes,
The
yes, I can.
state-qualified bond,
Yeah,
that normally,
it's in the
it is a
recap.
debt payment, but it's usually backed out of a revenue number because they took it directly out of chapter 70 money. So I'm not sure why it's shown this way in the budget book. It's a little confusing
I can
to
explain
me
it.
as well. Maybe
Yeah.
you can explain that a little bit better, but like I said, normally that state qualified bond payment and bond interest is backed out of the revenue from chapter 70.
So to that, so when we do and I don't know if you got the operating recap as a total piece in the mayor presented, but when we do the state qualified bond, we actually have to raise it on the recap. So it doesn't actually go into our appropriations. So if you look in the budget here, it's not in the appropriations or in your budget, but it is in the so it has to be that. It might be where that other state number was coming from that we had to raise, but we basically have to raise it on the recap. But then what Angelica does is then she backs it back into the budget so that she can pay it, or fund it. So basically it gets put into a different place. It's raised. It's just not in this budget, but it's on the recap.
Okay, I feel like I probably need to go back and listen to you say that in the recording to understand what you just said.
I could show you the recap and what I mean by that, if that makes sense. but-
Sure, and what does it, my big question is, what does it mean that we were almost $2 million more in debt, or in debt payments than we had anticipated? That's.
We didn't, we anticipated it. It's just the way we showed it in the budget. We knew that, so now that makes a little more sense why those numbers aren't the same, why they're different, because we do anticipate it. We do show it in the budget. We do raise it on the recap. We just don't put it in the line appropriation. We put it in a separate space on the recap, but it's part of our calculation of all of the money we have to raise. And then I think what Angelica does is she just moves it into the budget so that we can, pay the debt service out of it. And so that is a totally separate thing than the additional band payment this year, which we can talk about, but that's a different thing. But let me show you, let me share if I could just share my screen and show you the operating budget recap. I think that will help.
Do you know what page?
I don't know.
Figure it out.
I don't think the recap is in here.
Well, the recap sheet is on page 36.
Yeah, I mean,
This?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it is in
it's not
here.
the official one that's filed with the state. This is,
right.
I think would say a tax recap sheet, worksheet.
Okay, but it does show here. So this is
37.
right. So on page 36, it shows the recap. So you're seeing like the appropriations or the operating budget is what the mayor's putting forth. And then these amounts are other amounts to be raised. So they're not a part of the budget, part of the 61,627, but it's other amounts we have to raise. So this is the total amount that we have to raise, and this is what we are, raising on the recap. So based on what our revenues are, that's the number. But so this shows the state qualified debt here. So, and it shows that last year it was here too. So, yeah, so that's why that difference is showing up.
So that number that is on page 36 under state qualified debt is about 1,700,000. And you're saying that number, even though these show zeros on page 176 and 177, that amount added up lives there.
Yes. Yeah. It's coming off of the recap and then just going to the budget, but it's all been raised at that point in the recap. So, and then as far as the short-term debt payment.
Yeah.
That is the principal and interest that's owed on the ban, on the short-term debt that we have, so. And it's estimated to, that's an estimate, right, Kelly? That's what we have in there right now, the 550?
Yep.
505? 555, I can't remember, it's a five number.
It's
With so many-
45.
Five numbers, there's so many fives. Yeah, 555, right.
Yeah, and that's on a $20 million ban that we just were about to issue this month. That will come due next February. That's why we'll have to make the interest payment next February.
So we're gonna bond for another 20 million, probably next February.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay,
And that's inclusive of the fire, most of the fire station and the last chunk of the library.
okay. Thank you. Any more questions on this? On any of that? So. Anybody else? Okay, so if you think of any, we'll go back, but we have some is the next, we should go to department heads. I have that next on agenda. So we can do that and we can come back. We're gonna. So I have up next, who's been patiently waiting, is Community and Economic Development. That would be MJ Adams, I believe. So MJ, would you like to speak on behalf of your budget? And I'm wishing you well in your next endeavors. I see Christian is on
Like
here
she's sitting somewhere outside in Colorado.
at a fun place. You're on mute.
Okay.
Yes.
We're
Yeah,
2
I'm
hours
actually-
in. Could we take a 5-minute break?
I'm actually on phone because there's something going on with my headset, but I can hear you and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Great.
And
Great.
I just had somebody ask for a 5-minute break, but I'm going to let you go first and then we can do that. Okay, fair enough?
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. My battery's getting low. My budget this next year is proposed to see some increases, largely because of some shifting staffing expenses. You might know that my position, the director's position, is currently funded 50%, 60-40% split between the general fund and the CDBG grant funds. And the proposal has been for a couple of years to move that salary line item so that it's 100% grant funded by the city. Part of that is the need for the city to have a staff person who's paying much more close and dedicated time to the economic development support needs of the city. And we've got, a new staff member on with the community development administrator, and it makes sense for that shift to happen. I would say, especially since some of the economic development activity that I would like to be, or the director would have liked to be paying attention to, but was unable to because of the HUD funding, was around cannabis as an important element of our economic development activity. And I know Eric handles the host community agreements and the technical pieces around the permitting and managing the agreements. But more and more communities across Massachusetts are needing to find a way to better understand and to accommodate and to take advantage of the opportunities offered with cannabis. And with the director's position partially funded with federal funds until there's a change in the federal administration in terms of how marijuana is perceived, I had to have a hands-off relationship with any sort of cannabis activity. The other position that we're looking for the city to continue funding 50% with grant funds and 50% with general funds from the city is the grant program manager. That's Christian, who is also sitting in on this, I believe. Hi, Christian. And you might know that he has, over the past year, he stepped into first a new responsibility that was assigned to the Community and Economic Development Department, managing the start of the Community Preservation Act funds. He's done an extraordinary job. His, startup of a new activity is always a challenging event, and I think that we're lucky to have the CPA funds in the city, but we're also very fortunate to have him sort of as the staff person who's ramping that up and guiding it, especially as contracts are written, allocations are made, and tracking happens with those projects. He also provides a lot of support to other economic development activities. A lot of the programming that we've been doing in downtown, working with the GBA, the cultural districts, the Cultural Council. He also provides some administrative support to the Greenfield Redevelopment Authority and is generally a very important staff person. Like I said, partially funded with CDBG. He does spend about half of his time supporting the Community Development Administrator with all the paperwork and filing and software, grant software management that we have with that. But it's important to have part of his salary come out of the general fund because he does carry a lot of responsibilities that are beyond the Community Development Block Grant Administration. And I'll share with you, we are seeking to have his position upgraded a couple of steps to reflect the new responsibilities he's taken on supporting the economic development activity in the department. The other things that are happening are we are level funding our request for rent. The Community Development Office is co-located with GSET, and we pay for part of the rent for being able to live with them over there at 324 Main Street. We're looking for a little increase in our consulting services, funds available to engage in consulting services, largely around some regional economic development activity that we're doing in collaboration with the FERCOG and GCC around trying to develop more fully the entrepreneurial support systems that we have in our community, specifically as they relate to the digital economy. I did have some funding in my initial budget request for marketing, but I understand that the mayor is going to pick that up in her budget line item, and that's really advertising support, any sort of marketing or advertising. Last year, we were fortunate enough to have a relatively large grant from MOT, the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism. We're able to do some very extensive advertising in the Globe and in the local papers and on the local radio stations that really supported the activities and the events in Greenfield that draw visitors to our community. We're looking for $8,000, which is for cultural district support, and that's so we have a little funds that we can provide to the cultural district and for the programming in downtown in support of the activity that needs to happen down there. And then there's a little new line item request for membership organizations looking to join the Main Street program, which is a national program that supports revitalization of downtown. And you know that that's been a big focus of the city for the last couple of years, and we're looking to continue to engage in that as we roll out our downtown revitalization plan. The other items, the new item to support the new website that we have, Visit Greenfield, we did a significant upgrade with that, largely funded the design of that website upgrade with the MOT Travel and Tourism Grant last year, but we have an annual subscription that we need to maintain, and that's really become the go-to place where people are, when they want to know what's happening for events in Greenfield. That's been the go-to calendar. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, you'll see a new kiosk that will make its way onto our Main Street down by Court Square, and there's an annual software subscription that we need to keep so that we can continue to upgrade and make sure that that is cycling through and providing updated information. And then there's a request for about $8,700, which is a new request I'm making. That's to cover the DEP annual fee that's associated with the fee that the city needs to pay to Mass Department of Environmental Protection for the monitoring of the Lunt Brownfield site. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. So, MJ, you said there's two people, there's you and Christian, right? You and Christian in this department?
Anna.
And Anna.
My department is 4 staff. It's myself, the Community Development Administrator, Anna Altman. She's 100% funded with Community Development Block Grants. Christian is, at the moment, 50% funded with CDBG grant funds and 50% economic development funds, and we're looking to continue that 50-50 split. And then Doug Damaris, who's my rehab specialist, is paid 100% with CDBG funds. My position is the one that's going from 60-40 general fund CDBG to we're requesting 100% funding from general fund to cover the director's position.
Thank you. And so what is your salary and Christian's right now, please?
Say again?
What is your salary at Christian's right now, please?
The current
my
FY
salary.
23, is that what you're asking, or what's in
Well,
the
we
24?
have 107,044. So yes, the difference would be great to know that, what they were and what they're going to be.
My salary right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 85,000. It's budgeted for 87,000 for next year. And Christian's is budgeted for 39,500 for next year, a fiscal year. I'm sort of working a little remotely, so I don't have
That's okay.
a lot of detail with me, but I can certainly get you the current and the and it's in for next year at 87
Okay.
for the director position, 39.5 for the grant program assistant.
Okay, and that, very good. And how much was that annual subscription that you were talking about?
The software subscription for the kiosk or for the Visit Greenfield?
The Visit Greenfield.
3730. It's 3,730.
Okay.
Right, yes.
Anybody,
Yeah,
more questions? Christian, I watched you. You did a great job on that CPA. It was fabulous. You did a great job on that. And MJ, thank you too. You've been doing so much for the community. We're gonna miss you, really. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Any more questions for MJ or?
So I'm processing kind of slowly, just trying to quickly match numbers to what's on this sheet. So I'm going to probably ask you to repeat what you just said, MJ, but I'm just wondering the increase of the $37,000 between 2023 and 2024. I know that you said that maybe it was your position, or maybe it was Christian's, or maybe it was both, that you're looking to bring it to, or maybe it was Doug's to 100%. I'm just wondering what is that $37,000 made up of? Does that make sense?
Same one that was on there earlier.
So I see, I'm reading your face, that I don't know if you can't hear me or if you're confused about the numbers that I'm sharing.
I'm confused about the question.
Okay, I'll repeat it. So I have in 2023, the wages line being 70,500-ish, and it going in 2024 to 107,000-ish. And I'm wondering what that difference is.
Right. So we're looking for, in 2023, we had 19, looks like half of Christian's salary was paid for with CDBG. And, oh, I'm sorry. So
The difference is when we moved her salary into FY 24 as a full funded from on the city side, so to speak, out of ours. So what you see in FY 23 was because it was shared between, every one of the salaries in FY 23 was shared between CDBG and the city at a 60-40, sometimes 50-50 another time, and so forth. That was for Lindsay, that was for Christian, that was for MJ.
Okay.
This year, the 107 reflects the full 87,318 and 40 cents, moving, which is her salary or the position salary, into FY 24 operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
that's correct. That's correct. So in fiscal year 23, I was 60% city funded, 40% CDBG funded. And in fiscal year 24, the request is to be 100% city funded. Yes.
Okay.
And maintaining Christian at 50% in fiscal year 53 and 50% in 54. So the big increase that you see is the shift from the director's position being partially grant funded to fully city funded.
And Hannah is fully CDBG funded. That's why you just don't see
Yes, got it.
blank
That's,
space
that
there.
makes sense. That makes sense.
It's actually 4. So we used to have 3, now we have 4.
Okay, okay. And the purchase of services increase, do you know what that's?
MJ, do you want to explain purchase of service increase? It's a range of different services that we contract for.
Right. So purchase of services includes several things, including the rent, some consulting services, some programming support for cultural activities, economic development memberships and meetings, the new Visit Greenfield website support costs, including subscriptions, the new kiosk annual subscription that we'll need, and the new line item in that purchase of service budget I have to pay the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Street for the Federal Street site. And so it totals this year, I had requested 43,180. The 5,000 was deducted off of that in the mayor's review of it for the marketing budget line item. So we're now looking at a request of 38,180. And the increases from last year to this year, no change in rent, a slight increase by $3,000, I'm sorry, by $5,000 for the consulting services for marketing and design professionals, regional economic development initiatives. My budget in fiscal year 23 had 5,000 for marketing. It has 0 this year. The mayor's has a line item in her budget. She's going to pick that up. The CCD programming support, the cultural district supports, we increased that $3,000 this year, and that went from 5,000 to 8,000 to fund cultural council and cultural district activity supports. And then added a request for some funding to be able to join some economic development organizations, which include the GBA, Main Street America, and the APA, American Planning Association Economic Development Division. Added the Visit Greenfield supports, which are hosting, subscription, a little bit of a line item for some to make any repairs if we break and fix any of our hyperlinks. 3,600 for the kiosk, which is a 2-year warranty and a 2-year subscription. And then the 8,700, which is the new item, which is the Mass DEP fee that we need to pay relative to the state agency monitoring the Federal Street site, Federal Street Brownfield site.
Thank you, MJ. I'm wondering if it's possible to get, is it a munis or where do we, because it's not, it feels unfair to the department heads to ask for all the detail, and also I would love detail, and I see you have a detailed, is that, where do we find the detailed information?
I believe you sent them.
From the department.
I don't.
The operating, from your operating budget.
Do
So
you have it?
I got the updated operating budget, but it doesn't say things like what MJ just explained to us about 60/40 or 50/50.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we never actually see. It would say something like purchase of service. It wouldn't say,
Yeah.
it doesn't say a kiosk or, I don't have that open in front of me, but it normally doesn't say that. It actually lumps everything together. That's why each time Councilor Forgy last year would ask like what the department head made. And
Yeah.
I think, and I've seen other budgets that do it in a different fashion.
That's the advantage of this meeting, though, so that
Yes.
you have access to the department head to explain that to you, so that you don't have to try to translate both the budget book and a munis sheet.
For me, I'm not a very auditory learner, so and I hear MJ listing and I want to respect her time. Is it the information that you have there? Is that from Eunice, or where do I?
This was given to me by MJ. It's the way she calculates her budget. So when I sit down with her, I have this sheet. But this is how I know what she's requesting
Yeah.
each year.
Is
And then
there,
she does it very differently than anybody else. Mostly I get Munis sheets from all the department heads.
okay, so
I get this nice colorful thing.
and I'm fine with asking, maybe I asked you this, but I would love to not have to just ask for the report in the, I would love to have the numbers. I'm wondering, perhaps, do I talk to you or Diana afterwards to not take everyone's time to talk about this, but
What is it you're looking for?
detailed information.
Oh, okay.
The information MJ
Yeah.
just shared, but in writing so that I could look at it.
No, it would be just we would scan this sheet and send it to you.
So is that possible with the other departments?
Those are
I
Munis
think
sheets.
the other, yeah, I think the other thing, I was trying to look to see, I think, because so we have, when we enter things in Munis, when we first enter it, there's a level of detail entry where it has all this information, but then when we roll the budget forward, I'm not sure, I'm trying to see if I can still print that out. Because basically it's just what every department is entered into Munis for their request, but that's where they put all the details too, so.
Okay.
So if I could get a report for that, I think we could just print it out.
That would be
I'll see if I
great. So
do that.
then I don't need to, I feel like there's a lot of people here. I want to be respectful to everyone's time. So I'll follow up with you afterwards about that. Thank you.
Okay. So, anything more for MJ out there? Okay, all right, so do you want to take a quick break?
If I could, real quick.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out, to Catherine's point, now this is only year 2 for me on the council, but her exact question is something we distinctly laid out as wanting to have this year coming forward in the budget book. This budget book, while great, looks exactly the same with no changes, with no additions that were requested last year at nauseum, because they end up making these meetings drag out longer when we're asking the same question. That I get, we get the 0100210.511. That means permanent salary and wages for this department. And then, but we get no breakdown of that. That's great to have budget units or whatever you want to call them put in as a whole group, but we've asked and we've shown in the past that other municipalities literally break down sergeant, captain, lieutenant, whatever department it is. You would have mayor, you would have administrative assistant, you would have all of them just broken down really easy. We don't want the whole total number and then have to ask that question of every department that shows up to this. We're looking for the clear transparency of, here, fine, give us a total number, but then be like, hi, this is item 1. This is what the wages are for this department. And then you can have 1-A, 1-B, 1-C, and that would list every salary, every participation from it's, I mean, I really honestly don't think that it's that hard to do with a whole year to put it together. Like, it's been asked, and we were told last year we would get this year. And now it's just, not to really overuse the expression I know has been used by a certain person a lot, kicking the can down the road, is we're going to ask for it again, and then we're going to get an email that nobody else sees, that, you know, and that is frustrating when we're trying to go over this and trying to be transparent with the community. And this is what these meetings are for. They're not to belabor the process, and they're not to extend this type of meeting out for a long time when we asked for this in advance, and we do this all the time. I hate feeling like I'm repeating myself all the time. We ask for this information in advance so often, and we never get it. And we get it, what happened earlier tonight with some slides that we never saw ahead of time, that I know that Councilor Bottomley was frustrated with, trying to, digest this in one evening of a presentation. We can't look back at these slides unless we rewatch the meeting. And this is, and I'm sorry to be, kind of sounding petulant, but these are coming from people who are paid employees who do this all the time. This is the job all year round. You get salaries for this, and it's to put this information out to the public. We're not paid to do this all the time. We're paid very lightly and are trying to give our best effort into doing our due diligence. And when we don't get that information, especially when we requested it, and like I said, I can take this year's budget book versus last year's budget book, and it looks almost entirely the same in the layout. So that just means that our requests for more information ahead of time that were quote unquote promised to us to be in this year's book were totally ignored. And that's frustrating because, you know, I don't know, there's no repercussion for that other than to have to sit here and listen to me vent for the last 2.5 minutes about the frustration of it. And I guess that's it. And maybe that's why is for the next year, you won't have to hear a damn thing other than me vent next year when we ask for the same thing and we're still not going to get it. And that's that. But I guess it just goes on deaf ears.
Thank you, Mike. Okay.
If we could have this information.
What you were looking for, I think,
Mhm.
you get a capital budget book.
Yeah, and
They're
that
always
was,
out.
that was
Yeah.
far more detailed.
Yes.
I mean, I
yes.
have it right
So
here.
I think what you're looking for, now that I understand what your request is, what you're looking for is basically a operating budget book,
Yeah, yeah,
tabs, et cetera.
that's right, yeah. With line items.
Each member of Ways and Means.
Right.
Yeah, and available to the public.
This is that. I think
It-
you're
this
looking for
is-
the detail.
Yeah.
within these lines.
No, but I'm saying,
I
what
think you're saying the same
what they're looking for are these sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The munis sheets.
So
And we can get you, the summarized sheets.
Well,
But you would see
have
them.
some, I mean, I can.
No, what you're seeing is the single line, the
Yeah.
bottom line,
Yeah.
the total.
Well-
What you're looking for is under salary and wages, what is there?
Yeah, what is there and what is like the list that MJ just
It would be
shared, like. I
In addition to your budget
can't
book, you would
process
get something, well, this is me and many different things, but
Sure.
you would get something that would break it out by
that.
department.
Yes, please.
With each department head's operating budget.
That's right. Yeah. Can we?
That would be a lot more of a contribution, and this is literally no offense, but a lot more contribution than some of the fluff that goes in the beginning about learning about the history of Greenfield. Like, we want to learn about the history of Greenfield. We're not looking at an operating budget book. There's, you know, there are historical sites for that purpose, you know?
The budget book is for the public as well as for the city council. So we do try to educate the public with the budget book as much as we try to educate the council and or anybody else who picks it up. And then we synthesize the numbers so that you at least see the bottom lines for them. So that probably wouldn't change, but certainly for Ways and Means, first look, yes, that could
Okay.
change.
That would be great. Can we have that by Sunday or by Friday?
Oh.
So that, I mean,
We have,
Possible.
that would be great.
I don't know, there's 2 days for me, this is my last day here this week. But, you know, so we'd leave it to Diana and her people to give you a version of that. It can be done.
okay, that would be great. And I would, thank you. And I would also want ultimately it to be available to the rest of the counselors. And I
That
agree.
probably won't be done for this year. I wouldn't. think.
Okay, so it would be on us to
Given,
make.
well, I mean, we have a month to get it together. They're not going to get it that soon.
Not that soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for them to have it, because they're gonna have to make informed, our job is to make informed decisions, so just wanting information to make those decisions, so thank you. So shall I just follow up with you afterward, Diana?
Yeah, no, I think I can, I mean, I just want to make sure I'm providing what, what you're asking for, but also what the mayor wants us to put out. But I think what I think would make the most sense from my perspective is just giving you what we entered into, entered into Munis, because I think I could just print that out. I mean, it's not going to be like this. This is the mayor's, request in her book and her notes, but all of that information, the departments then put into Munis, and in some level of detail. Not every department does it the extent maybe that MJ does when her individual lines, but they are in there so you can see what she's, each one, what she's asking for under purchase service,
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
Sounds
to-
May I
a
show
lot
my
more detail
worksheet?
than that.
Pardon?
Oh, you
Yeah,
want
so my
to, do you want to
worksheet-
show your worksheet?
If someone will allow me to share a screen, I'll do that.
Oh, I'm gonna,
Somebody-
Do you want to take a break? I let you run the meeting. Go, you tell me what to do, honestly. I'm not doing anything else.
no, you can share it. Do you want,
I'm more asking for everyone's well-being. We've been here for,
we're only, we have 3 more department heads to go. I think that actually, if you wanted to stand up and take a stretch, it would be fine. If everybody else is okay. There's people that have worked all day, like
Yeah.
Eric and Kelly and Randy. Randall, that I would prefer to keep going because we said, because it's a long night. So
I think it's important
is that
for.
I just need to go to the bathroom. It's okay.
yes.
I think it's important.
Go.
5 minutes, 5 minutes. we need to
Hey, everybody, just so you know, I totally understand. That's perfect.
Not just
Great time.
Not just me.
Okay, so we're gonna go on, I'm gonna go on mute for a minute for everybody and then I'll put it right back on. But this is a nature's call break. That's what we say. I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. So we're gonna, go back on and
Did it?
there we go. Okay, so I think next up we have the planning. So Eric, I see you've been patiently waiting. Well, we have legal and licensing, but there's no one here from legal and licensing that I can see. So I'm gonna just skip to you, Eric. So go on ahead and we'll get to your.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Counselor. So the budget for the Department of Planning and Development, can folks hear me okay? Great. So a relatively small budget, mostly made up of salaries. There's 2 people currently in the department, myself as director and a 20-hour week conservation agent. So overall, the budget this year is about a 1.57% increase, which is essentially level funded with a little bit of increase. All that increase is due to salary increases. The conservation agent is part of the S union. So there's mandatory step increases and COLA for him and an increase in my salary as well, which is equates to the 1.57% increase in this year's budget. Just a couple of things about what's in my budget, and then I can answer any questions that any counselor may have. Essentially, it's salary, and the other major pieces of my budget is I have APA membership to the American Planning Association. I'm also a part of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Every year, there's a membership fee for those, which gets paid out of the department budget. Also, I'm required to maintain, get 32 continuing education credits to maintain that AICP certification. So in the budget, there is a money in there to attend 2 conferences a year for me to make those 32 continuing education credits. Let's see, dues and membership. Also, I forgot to mention the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. We have an annual membership to that. Let's see. And basically the rest of the budget is just for basic supplies for the printers that we have in the department. This department, we have the large format plotter that all of 20 Sanderson Street uses. It's can print out large maps and also scan a copy. So it's a great machine. So in the budget, I have money for print cartridges and the large paper rolls for that. Really, that's it in my budget. It's pretty much just salaries and those things I just mentioned. Happy to answer any questions you may have on my budget.
Eric, I'm just going to ask, what is your salary and the salary of the person that's 20 hours, please?
My current salary is $76,155.48. The 20-hour week conservation agent, let's see. Well, I know what his budget will be with the SSEA step increase. It'll be $28,662.40. I don't have his current salary listed here. A step increase is essentially 2.5% increase, and then I believe there's a 3% COLA allowed for his salary increase for the next year.
Good. Any other questions for Eric? That was a pretty level funded budget, I might say, Eric. So I don't think we're going to have lots of questions here because it stayed pretty much. That's what I didn't think you'd have a lot because this is actually less than your amended salary for last year. So I have no questions.
Great.
All right. But nobody else. All right. Onward. So accounting and assessment. Very good. Thank you so much. And thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. So we have assessors. We have Randy, and then Kelly. Randy, you're on. You care to unmute?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, very good. So So fire away. Maybe I shouldn't say that in this day and age. Actually, I take that back. I'm sorry I even said that. It's terrible week to say that. My bad. So why don't you tell us about your budget?
Counselor Emily Palmer.
I just let him in and I am looking at Randy's budget. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it pretty much stayed level funded.
Mhm.
We had salary increases. We're seeing a lower amount that we're contributing toward the consultant and RRG with my arrival, and we're our goal really is to get less dependent on them and do more things in-house really. And I think there's only one thing that we added, which was for travel expenses. So now that we're doing or getting to the point where we don't have to have all our meetings virtually, it's going to be nice to be able to travel to one, the association events and that type of thing, training, because to maintain our certifications, I'm sure like many other departments, there's a continuing education component of that. And so, I think for the most part, that was all that really changed, or the only thing that was really any significant or anything that was new that wasn't in last year's budget.
What you like. Maybe how many hours a week does Sandra work?
Probably.
Actually, that was one change that we did have. So
Thank you for
my
sharing.
goal is to get more staff, and I started with Sandra really and talked to her last year and saw that we did have sufficient funds in the budget at the time to allow her to work more hours. So we wanted to increase the staff, and I wanted to start with her because she was only putting in, I think, 30 hours a week. So now she has the ability to go up to a full work week of 37 and a half.
Oh, good.
So I'm not sure if she's been reaching that, but she's been getting darn close, and she's been in a lot more, which has helped out to have more staff time in the building.
And so what is your salary and what is Sandra's, please?
I don't have the exact numbers.
Okay, in the budget,
around 81,000, 81.5. And I know that Sandra's hourly rate is $24.97. I just was doing a public records request, and so part of it was a fee for the lowest paid employee in the department, and that happened to be Sandra. So I don't know what that it would equate to.
yeah.
Yeah. I hate that.
Yeah, we have 49,901
for the assistant, and we have 81,083 for the chief.
Okay.
Those are in the budget with just steps only right now because that contract is not settled.
So I had a question. It says this Dave Burgess from RRG, he works 6 hours a week for us. 6 hours a week.
Right.
Yeah, that's 8.
We're essentially paying RRG to be part of our staff. Yes.
Right.
No, it's a contracted service though.
No, I understand it's a contracted service. I was just remarking that it was. I actually looked to see Northampton spends about the same amount. They even use him. Well, I don't know that they use them. They have a contracted service. I don't know that it's the same at all. It's just that their population is 29,000. So that's $82,000. So that was all. It was just looking at that. I would love to have more of our own, but anyways, thank you for all you do. You're doing a great job bringing in, watching out for that new growth. And because that can actually, as you know, will make a big difference in, the levy limit. But we added new growth, but it's been consistently up. So there you go. Do we have more questions for Randy?
I have a question. And I'm sorry if I wasn't paying full attention. I'm sorry if you already answered this, but I see that one of the goals and objectives for 2024 is adding an additional member of the staff. I'm not seeing the that increase in wages. So I'm curious how that's happening? And maybe are you working to move the consultant into a employee or just, yeah.
So when
does
I
that make sense?
started,
Mhm.
or I started last year in April, right at the end of April. And at the time, they were looking to, and this is a conversation I had with Danny, the director of staff. And she told me that they were looking to hire and had somehow had the funds already appropriated for an extra staff member. But because I was coming on new, they didn't want me to have someone else who was also new to train all at the same time. So I'm told that somehow that the funds are, in line in some way, shape or form. But I mean, either way, yes, that's the goal, is to have more staff so that we have less dependency on the consultant.
Okay.
That's great.
And so that amount's already here in the budget.
Maybe as opposed to consulting. Is that what you're thinking?
I don't know that it's in this FY '24 budget,
But
because
it's
we had to
goal.
be pretty tight with the FY '24 budget.
One of the things that
It's a
we
goal.
don't get,
Not
we
a-
get
Also, there's not a lot of room down there.
we get a contract with RRG and they tell us, yes, it's this certain amount for the year, but they don't give us an itemized breakdown of everything. So there's different things that they're doing for us. They're processing our personal property form of lists. They're going
Right.
out and they're doing the cyclical inspection. And so if different items were taken over, I'm wondering how much that would adjust the amount that we're paying to them. And so as we, the goal is to get more staff on, and so we're doing more of those things ourselves, and then we're less dependent on them.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for Randy? I can't thank you enough for being here till 8:45 after you have had a long day already. And I'm very grateful for that. Long meetings and you've already worked all day, so thank you.
No problem, we're all part of the team.
Right, well, this is, your departments and Kelly's coming up, this is the revenue producing, so we need that to run the rest, so thank you so much. Anything else? All right, so last but not least, at all is Kelly Varner. So there you go, for the last. Sometimes they say the best for last. Should I say?
Like everyone else, medical orders, that was-
There you go. And everyone else, don't feel bad.
She went back into witness protection.
Okay. All right, so take it away. We're on page at 84, I think.
Are you keeping it dark for the cats?
No, this room just doesn't have, I have one light in here and it's just not very bright,
Just
unfortunately.
teasing her.
Yeah, my office is I have mood lighting in here, so. So my budget hasn't changed a whole lot from the previous year. We had some salary increases that were contractual that we had to add to the budget. All of my expenses for the most part are pretty much in line with the previous year. We did decrease the bond issuance expense line item because we have been getting bond premiums, which we are allowed to use to cover any of those issuance costs if we go over the $25,000. And I have meetings just like Eric and Randy. I have meetings I have to attend for continuing ed credits for my collector and treasurer certification every year, and membership dues for MCTA and the Franklin Hampshire Collectors Association. But really there isn't a whole lot of change. It's just me and my two staff, which is what we've had for the last, I think, 3 years. So, we're keeping up with everything. Obviously, we're doing good at collecting the money, bringing in cash. So, I think we're good at the funding that we're at for right now.
And it says here you have 4 full-time employees, but you have 3. You have 3
It's
full-time.
me and I have 2 staff.
Right, that's
I
right.
used to have 4. but-
I know you, so I thought this definitely is 3. It's
Yeah.
3. Okay. And Kelly, what is your salary?
I am at $84,084. We have not, my union has not settled our contract yet, so
Okay.
There is, I'm assuming there will be some sort of COLA in there, but I don't know what that will be.
And tell me what you said about the bond. I missed, I did not understand that, the bond issue expense, that it went, why that
Yeah,
was?
so we decreased it because we have typically been getting quite a bit of bond premium when we issue temporary notes or bonds. And you're allowed to pay expenses for that issuance with premium. And then obviously we keep the rest to put towards projects or
Okay.
to reduce any sort of issuance, whichever we choose.
And does this have to do with you, the tax title?
Yes, that's me as well.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay, so any more questions on this part of Kelly's budget? Oh, I see a hand, Mike.
I know we're only almost three quarters of the way through. But just because the only numbers that we had for actuals were 2022, do you have a relative expectation of what the 2023 actual will be on that bond issue expense you were talking about? Because like you said, you reduced it, by half. And the last actual we had was kind of almost in line with your current year request. I'm not going to hold you to the fire on this one. But do you have a kind of sense of where that number may be ending up?
I don't, I mean, we just started, we'll have issuance costs for this temporary note that we just went out for. I'm just starting to get bills for it. I'm not sure where it's going to end up entirely because it is such a large
Okay.
issuance.
Okay. Cool.
We did get, like I said, we got quite a bit of bond premium. I forget what the exact amount was. But I still have money left in the budget for bond issuance costs for 23.
Okay. So you're certainly not expecting it to
We won't go over.
hit the 50,000 level that was there.
No.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool.
So, why don't you tell us about the tax title then, Kelly?
Tax title, as you can see, it's been pretty much the same the last few years. That's basically costs for us to try and collect delinquent taxes that have been unpaid. All of those costs get pushed back to the taxpayer. So while we do have a line item in the budget for it, we do end up putting it. So if we pay it $150 to file a taking on somebody, it gets added to their tax account. So we essentially get reimbursed for all of these costs, or we attempt to anyway, as part of the collection process for tax title. But these are basically legal costs or filing fees or registry fees associated with that whole process.
And you get reimbursed at the time that each one happens, I imagine. Is that right?
As people pay, so
Yes.
as they pay to remove the lien from their property, these fees get paid off.
Right. Well, again, as I said, you're doing a great job with the outstanding. So, I mean, you're doing a fine job on that. That was remarkable. Do we have any more questions for Kelly? No. Anybody else have any more questions for Kelly, who's been waiting so patiently also? So, okay. So, and there's nothing else that I'm missing that you are looking at.
Unless you want to talk about any more of the debt stuff, that's the only other piece that belongs to me.
So do you think that number that we have there that we're budgeting for is going to be, we touched on that before and we said you were, and then actually Diana was presenting. So I just looked at that thinking that we had 20 more million to borrow for, and I thought the 13 million that we bonded for was costing us about $1.5 million a year is the principal. So 20 million, I imagine, was going to be.
It's going to be a good chunk of money. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of that will be it'll be spread out for 30 years. So like the library and
Right,
fire
but still-
station, we can spread out for 30 years. So,
I know, it's all, it seems to be, right, it's all at the beginning. I mean, the principal and interest is bigger at the beginning. The first, that's what it's like on the
I
chart.
mean, we can structure it so that it's not. I mean, there are certainly, when it comes to when we actually do bond, we can work with a financial advisor because you can kind of level fund it. So like all the principal payments will be the same, or you can stack it. So, you know, the front end will be heavier than the back end, or you can do it the reverse. I mean, there's many ways that you can finance it to try and make it best fit into our budget and to like our capital plan and everything. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to pay the most up front. Like I said, there are options of how we're going to structure the financing.
And have we historically had as much borrowing outside the debt limit as we have now?
I mean, outside the debt limit, we don't have any, it's not anything extraordinary. Usually those are typically water and sewer projects are outside the debt limit.
And that's about average? Is that
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I mean, Marlo has his sludge dewatering project, which is a little bit more than, you know, the average water and sewer project, but obviously in the long run, it's gonna save us money.
Any more questions on that? This is time to talk to this is time.
It's almost Kelly's bedtime, so.
Okay, well, then we're gonna let you go. I think it's people's bedtime in here too. Probably more than their bedtime. Everyone will be really glad. All right. I don't have anything more on that. So next, that's that. Thank you so much again for staying so late. And the last one on this is procurement, which is
Laura, yeah.
Laura.
Yeah.
Who, did you have anything to say about Laura?
No, I don't think, well, she's actually, I don't think Laura's here, but, so as far as, are you talking about central services or just the
Just-
piece? It's just the
I mean,
procurement?
it was just last on here, so I thought she's not.
Yeah.
so you generally-
Right, well, she does a central service budget. So to that end, I think we did have, you know, we did leave some increases or are seeing some increases in that budget. I think there was one thing that we had with, some of it had to do with some backup archiving that we needed to secure
Okay.
some funding for that. So that was an increase in there. What's the other thing? Yeah, Crocker was the big increase in the telephones because of the archive information. Where is this in the book, do you know?
Would be procurement or central
I think
services.
it's under central services. Let me see, let me just.
Oh, I got it. It's 104.
Printed the detail for these folks. Look at what she's got in there for detail. Central services.
The telephones went up by 50%.
Right.
And that was because, yes, just you tell me, I have no idea.
You want to explain?
Oh, yeah, so the token, right, so it has to do with our contract with Crocker and our telephone system. They're like our contracted service provider for our telephone system, and they're increasing our telephone, that by like, I think, $20,000. We budgeted, well, she'd asked for 145, I think we did 125. But that's where the big jump is. It's in contracted services with telephone and communications. Like it's our PBX phone system and archiving our messages and everything that's required by Mass General Law.
And that rate went up like 100, like twofold.
Yep.
Damn.
Or doubled.
And copy machines also.
Yeah, so we are, I know they're working on, making sure that we have the appropriate funding for copies. I don't think that went up though. I don't think that's in not too much.
59 to 65.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so again, that's just to cover our copy machines, contracted services, and what we pay for supplies and services to maintain the copy machines.
If you'll remember, that was one of the budget drivers, the increases in contracted services, which we contract with them. So they're allowed a certain amount of increases every year.
Much of these are contracted services or supplies and services around central.
So on that, to go back to that telephone and comms, that's being contracted service, do we have like a multi-year contract with these folks, or has there been any solicitation for comparable pricing, or are we, cornered by the market that exists kind of like some utilities are? Is there any, I mean, because getting a 100%, literally 100% increase, that's a big jump for any kind of, even if it's a public utility, which that's not necessarily a public utility. There's a competitive market on that. So has there been any kind of procurement on that, or are we locked into a multi-year contract that we are now hitting the back end of?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The Crocker contract might be in its last year. I believe it is, yes. So we would be going out again for bids.
But so that would mean that a previous contract allowed for an
Probably
increase of 100%?
It could be, Mike. I'm not sure. I don't know if I don't have the contract in front of me, but I know that she did say that it was, that there was some, I don't know if there's additional services in there as well. I'm not sure, but I'll see if I can find out.
Question. That's a good question. And there's one.
I mean, I know a lot of things have gone up significantly. I mean, waste services have gone up, randomly, and a lot of those contracts get built in with, market volatility, market index things that are all looped into their contracts. But I wouldn't think, I mean, maybe I'm just naive to that, but I wouldn't think that a telecom, even a multi-year contract would be without, almost like an opt-out clause of, we're going to send you this increase. And, if you end up paying this bill, then that's an acceptance of the further 12 months of it. But if you don't, you have the option to opt out and cancel. That's, I mean, at least in my experience with procuring any kind of contracted services in the public sector, those seem to be there. I know that a lot of times those get missed and they go by the wayside, and then kind of you're locked in for the next 12 months because it didn't get canceled within the whatever day period. So now you're locked into that contract. So I was just wondering if it was something like that, or if it was, I don't know, just I don't know, maybe just an oversight on recognizing that, because that's an extreme jump. That's not even, I mean, like I said, I've seen waste disposal costs go up like 23%, but I mean, electricity costs we've seen go up, 20-30% before DPU steps in and says, well, maybe you should get that back down to maybe like 13 or 15%. But I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, she had to purchase additional services.
Yeah. I think it's actually for additional services, Mike. I'll find out specifically, but I think, I don't know if it has to do with the new buildings that we're putting online, but it has to do with our telephone and communication system. It isn't just a year-over-year increase. It has to do with we needed to have additional services.
And it could easily be additional services for telephones for the fire department and the library. It could be, as you say, we're archiving our messages. That's something that we would have to pay them for.
I know it had something to do with that too, that we had, we didn't have enough system capacity to properly store messages that we needed to retain, something to that effect. I remember her telling me that was part of it, but I know it was additional services too. So I will get you that. Unfortunately, Mike, I just sent you the detailed budget out of Munis, so you can kind of see some of the detail lines. Unfortunately, she didn't identify that line particularly, but I will find out and get you that information.
So would this be, I guess, as a future thought, would this be more along the lines of what we'd be looking for in the years to come, as opposed to the, 60 something thousands that were in the last couple of years? Should we be expecting that the future years would be upwards of 100 grand? Or I guess that's why I'm asking it. Is this an anomaly, or is this going to be more of a perpetual thing?
I think it's going to be closer to the number, but I think the mayor's right that we may be in short order able to rebid it. So there might be some competitive, gain in that respect in a future year if we could repackage it and bid it out, which I'm sure we would do if we thought we could be competitive. But I think that what I recall is that there's additional services that are needed. So I think it will still cost more.
So for instance, for the library and the fire department, let's just take those two new buildings with new communication service. Once it's in, it's in. So the bid specs for the next 3-year contract would reflect a total number of phones and telecommunication services. This is the year that those were added.
It's not just, it's phone lines, it's alarm lines, it's
Yes.
elevator lines. It's surprising the kind of telephone lines that get used for all those different services that you wouldn't really think about.
Sure.
It says 1.2, just use somebody that works like a day a week. It says 1.2 FTEs.
Oh, you're looking at
The salary.
you're back to are you looking at the part-time person?
I don't know, all I know is it says 1.2 people. So if there's somebody that works just a day a week or something?
One day a week yes.
That's correct. Well, and like
So that is your salary and wages part-time line item well, actually, I think it might have changed. I have it in at, it's at 9,000 now.
Yeah.
So it's 1 day a week, and it was 3% and steps.
So what does that person do?
Procurement support, so helping to open the bids, collate bids, respond with letters, respond with correspondence, a very, kind of a clerical, just a clerical piece of the CPO work. Witness, sometimes you need a witness for the bids.
Okay. So any more questions?
I have one last question, but it's not about central services.
Well, that's okay. We can have other questions.
Okay, just going back to economic development. I'm wondering the proposal is to move the director's position to be fully funded by the city. And I'm wondering what happens if the council decided not to do that. Would that position go to 60% time? Would the community block grants pay for that? What would happen?
I think I understand your question. So I think MJ spoke very well to why we would do that. And we have an opportunity now to hire a new person. So that salary that she's hired at may or may not be the salary that we would bring somebody new on to. Mm-hmm. It would not be more necessarily, but it could be less. So part of the reason is the desire in the economic development department to have someone literally devoted to economic development only and not CDBG half-time between CD or 60% time, whatever it is, between CDBG and its economic development. It was MJ's request earlier in the year before she realized she would be retiring to take on a greater role in economic development. Obviously, it's what will ultimately grow our tax base, and it's important to have somebody devoted to that. The other piece that was critical was to be able, as she explained, and you may not have understood it, but if that position is, for no fault of your own, it's just the way the federal government works. So if it is CDBG funded, then the economic development director can have nothing to do to facilitate any of our marijuana businesses that are beginning to come online. Okay. Because it receives federal funds. So now that person, whoever that person may be, would be able to also work hand in hand with Eric, who handles all the HCA's, but to be able to communicate more directly with them.
Okay.
So that is the reason for doing, moving that position into its own place as an economic development position. Person still has responsibility for the CDBG employees, and as she explained, for Christian,
Okay.
who is the assistant.
Okay.
So I don't really know the answer to your question because we, the intent is to, I mean, I think that would have to be, we would have to adjust any of our, whatever we are spending for CDBG, if it were to go back the other way.
Okay.
This seemed to be the appropriate year to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on anything that we had before us tonight?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to comment that I appreciate you all enduring my inquisition at times. However it may have come across, but yeah, I do appreciate the effort put in, and appreciate any further effort that could be made to clarify any of the items that were brought up tonight. I know it's a time crunch, and we're all trying to push this through the best we can. I think it's also very important that we have these to express, critical thought and positive. I believe they are positive in the criticisms that may be brought up for future years and future endeavors with this. So I appreciate all the effort.
Back to your question on the economic development director, it wouldn't change the person. You know, what I'm saying is whatever the 60-40 split would still be 60-40 of the, whatever this year's is, which is 87 something. If you asked what would happen if the council decided not to fund it fully.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, what would be I think what I'm hearing you say is, would it go back to being funded partially by CDBG and partially by the city?
Yeah.
And I think the answer would be yes, but it wouldn't change the number, the 87 number, unless you happen to reduce it. She is a in a union. She's part of the S unit. So it was a contractual increase.
But if I'm understanding correctly, the increase from, was it like 70,000 to
She's at the very
107?
top, actually, of the S schedule, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe I misunderstood. What I thought I was understanding was that increase was so that her entire salary could come onto the city operating budget instead of having it be
That is
actually.
right. That is exactly what was said.
Okay. And so if we were to not fund that increase, that it would continue to be, she would still make, that role would pretend, if it was MJ, she'd be making the same. If it's somebody else, they may make less if they're coming in at a different level.
But it would still be 60-40 split of that, whatever the number ends up being.
Okay, it would be the 60-40 split, and that money wouldn't be there, but it would be 60-40. That person would still have their role. They would be precluded from interacting as much with marijuana development because they're being funded by the CDBG. I think, I'm just saying back to what I think you said to me. I'm understanding.
You're on track with that.
All right.
It's just that we don't know who we're going to hire and what their level of experience is.
That makes sense.
The goal is to hire someone who's more experienced in economic development, because we have a CDBG administrator
Okay,
in Anna Oltman, who
Got it.
does know that side of the business.
okay,
Wow. Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A
I
second.
think, point of order.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, let's tell you when the next meeting is first. Yes.
I think you have to announce the next meeting, right?
Yes. Of the next meeting date. You are absolutely right. Thank you for keeping me honest. And I thought of that before I took the motion to adjourn. The next meeting date is Tuesday, April 18th, here in the City Hall meeting room and hybrid. And we have a few appropriations on that, and then we're meeting with Marlo Warner, the DPW, for all of his things. So happy reading. And now, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Well, so moved.
Okay.
Excuse me.
So moved by Councilor Golub, and do I have a second? Okay, you're okay? All right. All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay,
Aye.
all right. Nighty night, everyone.
Yeah.
Good night, guys.